Spooky story time. It is pouring right here where I live, and I actually have a story time called The Rain Man, so let's do it. A follower sent me this story. For the sake of this story, we're going to call him Jake. And he says that when he was about 12 years old, him and his family moved into this small town, and he's always been a little sensitive. Now that he's older, he looks back and it's kind of funny, but he was always afraid of everything. He was always hyper alert, hyper aware. He was just like looking out the window, and if he heard a noise, he'd be like, "Did you hear that?" He was just very aware, very alert. So he says that his house was a one income household and they often moved from home to home because they rented, and they often tried to find the best deal. So there was this place that was hiring. His dad was like, "You know what? It's more money. We should move. I found a house. It's very cheap." So the whole family packs up and they move. He didn't specify where, but he did say that where this town is, it rains a lot. It's very moist. It's always raining, and obviously, one night it was raining. He couldn't sleep. The thunder was loud. There was lightning. He couldn't sleep. So he's just sitting by his window and he has his blinds open. There's a lightning that happens, and he sees this man in a raincoat, kind of like the guy from I Know We Did Last Summer, the fisherman, kind of like that. You couldn't see anything. He had his hood on. He was just standing there. And he says that because he's always been a very scared person, he freaked out immediately, closed the blinds, went to go lay down. Now, like I said, this place rains a lot. So every time it was like really bad and raining at nighttime, he would go check, and the man was there every time. He woke up his sister because he felt like his sister was a little bit more into this kind of stuff. He felt like she would believe him. So wakes her up, comes and looks, and she sees this man too. Naturally, they go and they tell their parents. The parents don't believe them because do they ever? And then they finally wake up Big Brother. Big Brother sees this man and he's like, "All right, so you're telling me that this guy has been looking through y'all's window? No, 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 no." So he bolts downstairs, runs, puts on his coat, runs outside, and there's no one there. And for a while, there's no one there. And he says that if this didn't happen to him, he would not believe it. But he said that the very last time that they saw anything similar to this, it was pouring, it was raining, lightning strikes. There is no man, but his coat, his raincoat, is right there in the middle of the street on the floor where this man used to stand. Again, they freak out because I just got chills. That's scary as hell. So they wake up Brother. He sees this thing and he's like, "All right, there's something going on." They go to the library and they dig. They start digging, and it so happened to be that this man was walking at nighttime, walking his dog, had his rain boots on, had his raincoat on, and there was a drunk driver that struck him, and unfortunately he passed right in that intersection. Now, obviously, the obituary showed a actual person, his face and everything. It wasn't like the raincoat or anything like that, but they think that whoever this man was that was watching them or standing out there in the rain is the man that passed away and got run over. And he says that after they found that out, they never saw this man again. So sad because, I hope he's resting, but it's scary as hell because you're telling me that if it's raining, thundering, lightning, I look outside the window and there's a man standing out there? Hell no. Thank you so much to Jake for sending me this spooky story. If you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email because I'd love to read them, and I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
This freaking duende story gave me chills when I heard it. So this girl is on this podcast telling a story that her brother told her. Her brother says that he is at home in his bedroom. The way that the layout is, there's like a really small closet, there's a tiny hallway, and then there's a restroom next to his room. So he's like near the closet, he's looking at the clothes thinking of what he's gonna wear for the day, and that is when he sees something pass by. Instantly turns around and instantly wants to know what is happening, and she says that her brother's not the type that's scared. He's actually been living with duendes and he's very much aware of it. She says that her brother is so playful that sometimes he even like tries to talk to them. Like he starts saying things just to see if they would say anything back to him. Or like sometimes if he's missing something that he knows he put down at a certain area, he will out loud be like, okay, who took it? Like, what if you guys took it? You need to bring it back to me. So when he sees this like shadow, he goes to look immediately and he says that there is like a dresser with 2 drawers and both of them are open, and he sees this duende. He could see the clothes, he could see everything except he doesn't see the duende's face, but he sees when the duende almost steps on those dressers that are open and jumps behind the dresser. Because her brother is so playful, he goes to the dresser and those 2 drawers that were open, he starts opening and closing them like over and over again. He said that he really did want to see it. He wanted to see this duende's face. What the fuck is wrong with him? So the brother opening and closing, he starts talking to the duende out loud. He's like, hey, come back. I really want to ask you something. Maybe we could have dinner. I have so many questions to ask you. I just really want to know. Can I see your face? Come on, I want to talk to you. I've been wanting to have conversations with you. He was being honest. He was being real because he had always felt these duendes, but they never actually let him see. So this is the moment that he saw the duende and he's like, I'm not gonna like miss this opportunity. He said that in the past he would see them, but it would just be like little shadows, like little things moving here and there. Nothing like complete until this moment. So he's going in, right? Going in. He says that from behind the dresser, he hears a voice, a little raspy, almost like an old man's voice, say, I don't want to talk. Oh my god, I have chills. No. You don't want to talk and I don't want to live here anymore. Because what the fuck, bro? That would have scared me. Obviously, it's in Spanish, so he says that the little man voice say, no quiero hablar. No quiero hablar. No quiero, like, yo tampoco quiero hablar contigo. Ah. The way I would have fainted in that moment. Or maybe even have a heart attack. Like, who knows? Yeah, no, I would never do that. What the fuck? That's so scary. But what do you guys think? Would you ever try to talk to a duende? I mean, why would he let him see him, though? I mean, if he is curious, I guess, why would he let the guy see him and then be like, I don't want to talk? Toxica! That was the toxic duende right there.
What would you do if you did a ritual with a demon thinking that it would help you, and then you started waking up every night with something waiting for you in the corner? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who says that she did a ritual to get some help, and something else answered instead. I did a ritual with a demon, and I wish I hadn't. This happened about 2 years ago when I was at one of my lowest points in my life. I was desperate for things to change. I'm not even saying that dramatically. I mean, I was tired and broke and lonely and in an awful mental place. And that was how I found it. Some late night forum post, and then another. And then pages and pages of people talking about rituals and entities and offerings and asking for help from things that were never supposed to help anybody. I know how stupid that sounds now. And at the time I convinced myself I wasn't doing anything serious. Just some weird little ritual from the internet. It was a candle, a few words, and an object I was supposed to bury after. I told myself if nothing happened, fine. And if something did happen, maybe it would finally be in my favor for once. But nothing happened at first. That was the part that made me feel safe enough to regret it too late. The first few days were normal. There weren't any weird sounds, there was no shadows, and no instant haunting. I actually remember laughing at myself a little and thinking I had gotten all worked up over nothing. And then the dreams started. Not nightmares exactly at first, just the same setting over and over. My basement. Only in the dreams it was always darker than it really was. And no matter where I stood down there, I had this feeling I was being watched from the far right corner beside the furnace. I'd wake up sweaty and shaken with my heart pounding, and then calm myself down because it was just a dream. And then one morning I woke up in the basement. Not in my dream. Actually there. I was sitting on the floor in the dark in front of the furnace room door with no memory of walking downstairs. That is the moment I should have left the house and never gone back. Instead, I convinced myself I had sleepwalked. I had never sleepwalked before, but that felt easier to believe than anything else. The next few nights, I barely slept. I kept the lights on and I shoved my chair under my bedroom doorknob like that was going to stop anything. And I told myself stress can make people do strange things, and I was just stressed and exhausted and turning into a horror movie in my own head. Then it happened again. I woke up standing in the basement, and it was pitch black. No memory of how I got down there, with bare feet on the cold floor, one hand already on the wall like I had been feeling my way down there somewhere in the dark. I ran back upstairs so fast, I smashed my shin into the second step, and after that I started hearing whispering. Never loud, it wasn't clear at first either, just little sounds right at the edge of hearing. It happened while I was brushing my teeth, and while I was trying to work in the living room, and once while I was fully awake in the kitchen making coffee, I heard something right beside my ear say, "Go downstairs." I dropped the mug, and it shattered all over the kitchen floor, and I just stood there shaking, listening for it again. But nothing. And that was what made it worse. It never stayed long enough for me to prove it to anyone. My friends thought I was losing it from lack of sleep, and my sister told me to go stay somewhere else for a few nights. And I almost did. And then I started thinking maybe it was tied to me and not the house. And if that was true, what was the point? The worst night came about a week after the second basement incident. I had forced myself to stay awake until almost 4 a.m. because I was tired of what would happen if I slept. At some point, I must have passed out anyway, because the next thing I remember is opening my eyes in the basement again. This time, I was sitting on the floor. I knew exactly where I was before I could see anything. That cold, damp smell and the furnace ticking, the unfinished concrete wall beside my shoulder. I didn't move right away because I could already feel something in the room with me. Not moving, waiting. I turned my head towards the far corner beside the furnace, and at first I thought I was just looking into a darker part of the dark. And then I saw the outline of him. An old man, tall and too thin, standing with his shoulders slightly bent and his arms hanging loose at his sides. And he was smiling. That was the first thing I knew for sure. And then I realized he had no eyes, just dark, wet holes where they would have been. And while I was staring at him, too scared to even get a breath in properly, he started whispering over and over, "Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it." Not loud and not rushed, but just steady, like he had been saying it long before I even woke up, and he was going to keep saying it long after. I tried to stand and my legs almost gave out under me. I stumbled backward, and that was when he tilted his head a little and smiled wider. And then he said something else, still in that same low whisper. "The house wants to be hotter." I ran upstairs, I slammed the basement door and shoved the kitchen table against it, even though I knew that made no sense. And then I sat on the floor in front of it until sunrise with every light on in the house. I left that day and stayed with my sister for a week. I did not tell her everything, just enough that she knew I was scared and not sleeping and needed out of the house. And for the first 2 nights there, I thought maybe it was over. And then I woke up on her basement floor. She did not even have a finished basement, just bare cement and storage bins, and a furnace, and one hanging bulb. I was curled up beside the stairs with dirt on the bottoms of my feet. That was when I knew it had come with me. I never finished the ritual the way that the post said I was supposed to. I never buried the object, and I never closed anything, and I never did any of the other stupid things people online swore mattered. I threw everything away, and that night I heard the whisper again, right beside my ear while I was laying in bed at my sister's house. "You asked." I still don't sleep well. I haven't done anything even close to that ritual again. I don't mess with that kind of thing, and I don't even like hearing people joke about it around me. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and the house is too quiet, I still get that same feeling I used to get right before opening my eyes in the basement. Like something is already standing in the corner, waiting for me to notice it. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
This Spooky Scary Storytime came from Angie, and there is a trigger warning on this one because it is quite sad and deals with quite a heavy topic. But it takes place 25 years ago when Angie was working nights at a gas station. She says she believes it was 1996 or 1997. She only remembers the year because she thinks that her son was about 1 or 2 years old at the time. Back then, everyone received their news from the daily newspaper, which was delivered to the gas station around 5 a.m. every single day. And the gas station where Angie worked was just off the highway in Michigan, outside of a city suburb. Customers were a diverse group of travelers and locals alike, and one of these locals was someone that Angie calls Lisa for the story. And Lisa came in every weekday morning around 4:45 a.m. She worked nights as a janitor at a large automotive plant. Most nights when she came in, she was just grabbing a coffee before heading home. And so Angie got to know Lisa, and she knew that she was 35 years old and she was in a custody battle with her ex-husband for their 12-year-old son. She described her as being quite pretty. She was a slim, attractive blonde who always wore a cute top and a pair of jeans, nothing fancy, and if anything, all she looked was tired. Seeing her so often, they struck up a casual friendship, and they would talk about life and their struggles and things they were going through and things they wanted to achieve. One morning, Lisa came in and she seemed quite sad, and Angie was like, "What's wrong?" And Lisa revealed that her son had decided that he wanted to live full-time with his father. And though it made her sad, she said boys will be boys and boys need their father. Though it broke her heart, she said it was her son's decision and she was happy to respect what he wanted. As time went on, Lisa seemed sadder and sadder, and she revealed to Angie that her son didn't want to spend as much time with her because he was embarrassed to have a janitor for a mother. He didn't want her to pick him up from school because he was embarrassed by the way that she dressed because she looked poor. And she believed that her ex, so her son's father, had something to do with this, but she couldn't prove it, and often just said to Angie, boys will be boys, he'll grow out of it. Over time, it became very clear to Angie that Lisa was hurting over the things that her son would say, and she would talk about this more and more as she came into the gas station, and Angie really believed that they had developed a bond. Lisa would often hang around the gas station longer than she had previously, much longer than it took at least to pour a cup of coffee and pay, and it seemed like she really just needed someone to listen to her. Angie was happy to oblige. So on to the weird part. After a few months of this going on and Lisa kind of telling her all about her problems, Lisa came in a little bit earlier than usual. It was about 3:30 in the morning as opposed to her usual 4:45 a.m. Angie had been mopping the floors, and so she had the doors locked, but she saw Lisa standing at the door and she opened it up, and Lisa didn't come inside. She just said, "I just wanted to come and tell you goodbye. I just want you to know that you helped me, and I can tell that you really cared for me, but I want you to know that everything is fine now." She said, "After tonight, I won't be seeing you anymore." And this struck Angie as odd. And she was like, "Well, where are you going?" And she said, "I'm going home now. I just came to say goodbye." It just didn't seem like Lisa wanted to talk. And so Angie just said, "Okay, get home safe." And she thought that it had something to do with maybe job loss. Maybe she was moving, but it didn't feel like it was her place to ask. And so Lisa leaves, and around 5 a.m., the morning papers came. The front page of the local paper was Lisa's photo with a note of her passing. It happened at the plant the night prior, and it was suspected that it was done by her own hand. Angie says she could not wrap her mind around it because she had just talked to Lisa 2 hours prior, and she had her personal number. She gave her a call and it went straight to voicemail, and she says text messages just weren't a thing back then. And she continued to call her number until 8 a.m. when her shift ended and her boss came in. And then she asked her boss to see the security cameras. Pulled them up and they reviewed the tape, and she says that you could see Lisa standing in the doorway talking to her. And it freaked her out so much that she actually called the police and had them come to review the tape. But the police did not believe it was Lisa. She said there was no way her time of death was before the time on your camera. And she says, "No, it was her. I know it was her." And they just kept saying, "Are you sure it wasn't someone that looked like her?" But they did take the tape with them. She said even though it's been years, she still thinks about this incident and wonders how it's possible that Lisa could have come to say goodbye and been dead at the same time. Her name has been changed, but she will be seeing the comments. Let her know if you have questions or if you have comments for her. And if you have a spooky, scary story time you think nobody would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much, because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah! Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. It's time to go get your snack, right? And you're okay. I uploaded a new YouTube compilation for y'all on my YouTube yesterday. So you shouldn't be watching anyone else's because they're making money off of me. Before I start, I just wanted to say I love you. That's all I wanted to say because I love you. Okay, let's get on to the story. I'm gonna stop being mushy. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this guy Kevin. So, Kevin met this girl, let's call her Gia. And him and this girl immediately hit it off. He liked this girl and she likes him. They go on a couple days and it's great. And so they start talking and they talk for about 2 months until Kevin started to realize, like, she may not. I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna work. The reason for that is that he started to realize that Gia was doing a little too much sometimes. Like, she would literally call him about 10 times. If she called the first 2 to 3 times and he didn't answer, she will continuously call. And when he finally picks up the phone, like, yo, why are you calling me this much? She's like, oh, sorry for feeling like sorry. Not sorry, but worried. Like, she'll like play it off like, I'm sorry, like I just have trauma, like I'd be so worried. My mind thinks that something is happening to you and I have to be sure that, you're okay. And at first it was like, okay, she's dealing with some kind of trauma. But then it's like, if I continuously tell you, like, stop doing that, if I don't reach out to you, if it's like a day, then yes, I understand. But like, give me some time. She still does it. And then like, she'd cry if he didn't answer, right? And so he started to realize, like, yeah, I don't think I can handle like your emotions because you can't handle them. Another thing that she would do is that, like, when they get into like small arguments, like, she would like post little shady stuff on social media about him. But then like, if you would ask her, is this about me? She'll be like, no, that's not about you. Like, he would see right through that. Anyway, he starts to realize, like, this is not something that I want long term. And he would like voice that to his friends too. So his friends basically told him, like, hey, well, you got to be honest with her. Like, you got to tell her that, because you can't ghost her. So he's like, yeah, you guys are right. I'm going to have that conversation with her. So he calls her. He says, hey, can I come over? I want to have a conversation with you. She says, yes, of course. So he goes over there and he basically tells her, like, hey, I don't think this is going to work. You're a beautiful person, beautiful soul. I just don't think we're right for each other. He tried to make it sound like as nice as possible, but she was not happy about that. Like, she immediately started to cry. She immediately like started to blame herself. And she just like made it so much harder for him to do, But ultimately, he like stood his ground and he was like, I'm sorry. Like, you are beautiful. Like, I just, it's not for me. Like, he had to find a way to leave because like, the way that she was like in bad shape and he felt so bad about leaving her. But he had to think, like, if I stay and I just broke up with her, then that just like, this very confusing for her. Like, I'm not going to stay and comfort her, which is what she wants from me, because then that would be confusing her. So ultimately he left. He called his friends. He told his friends, hey, I did it. It wasn't easy, but I did it. So the next day, she calls him, and of course he answers, and she's like, hey, like, I'm sorry about last night. I was in a really bad shape, but like, I understand now. I did pack up your stuff, and I really would like for you to come pick it up. Mind you, that was a bit confusing for Kevin because the stuff that she's talking about is a shirt and a pair of earrings. But he wasn't trying to argue with her, like, it seems like she's trying to heal. She want my stuff going. I will come pick it up. So he goes to pick it up. So he doesn't even go in her house, right? She comes down, she hands him the shirt and the pair of earrings, and they got into about like a 10-minute conversation, and then he said he has to go. Now, only problem is, mind you, he doesn't even remember turning off his car, but when he went to turn on his car, it wasn't coming on. Also, this is nighttime too. She did call him, the next day. They spoke about it during the day, but he didn't come until nighttime. Anyway, his car is not turning on. He's trying everything. He can't see what's wrong with his car and why it won't turn on when it was working perfectly fine. He's calling some of his friends. Nobody is answering. So ultimately, he ends up calling AAA. AAA comes to see what may be like wrong with the car. They tried to jumpstart it. It's not working. Mind you, it's late night too, so he had to wait for AAA to get there. Of course, she offered for him to come in and wait there, but he was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, he didn't have a good feeling about it. He just stayed in the car. But when AAA couldn't figure out, like, what was wrong with it, and it's not like they could tow it to the nearest body shop, So ultimately, she's like, hey, just stay the night and we'll figure all this out tomorrow morning. It's nighttime. I know you're tired from work. Like, I promise you can sleep on the couch. I won't touch you. Just like stay the night and you'll worry about all of this tomorrow. And so he ends up spending the night. He did indeed sleep on the couch. However, when he woke up the next day, he felt completely different about her. It's almost as if the favor that she did for him was like the biggest favor she ever did for him in the world. This is him describing how it feels. And all of a sudden, he felt this feeling of gratitude for her. And all of a sudden, he didn't want to break up with her anymore. All of a sudden, he wanted to be by her side. He didn't even want to go home the next day, but he had work, so he had to. He called his job to tell his job that, his car is down. He might be late ahead of time until he figures out the, car thing. When he goes down to his car is working perfectly fine. It's turning on. It's as if nothing happened to it. He found that weird, but he also found that as a sign to stay with her. He's like, bro, I broke up with her. My car broke down. It would not work. She did me a favor. Now that I decided to stay with her, my car's back on. Like, that was the universe talking to me. From that day going forward, he wanted to do everything with her. He wanted to be by her side 24/7, all of that. He would, if anything, he would be calling her about 9-10 times now. Now, mind you, his friends also noticed that shift, and they noticed that shift happened after that night, because when he ended up telling them about it, they were like, we never got no phone calls from you. That's why they weren't answering. This goes on for about a month. His friends can't get him to come out with him, and he's somebody that's pretty social. Like, the regular stuff that he likes to do, he's literally canceling them to be with her. He's talking to everybody differently about her. Like, anything that anybody has to say about her that's not positive, he will get upset real fast. Even if it's things that he used to say himself. Anyway, his friends decided they wanted to see what was going on. One of his friends, who was Haitian amongst all of them, is telling their friend group, like, this nigga is under voodoo. I know voodoo when I see it. That bitch did something to him. We need to figure out what the fuck it is. He even told his mom, and his mom was like, yeah, that sounds like he might be under some shit. So he's telling his friends, and so ultimately they all decided, like, we need to figure this out. So they speak to Kevin, and they're like, hey, can we come over to hang out? Like, we never get a chance to be around your girl or you anymore. Like, let's all have, like, a party night, game night type of thing. He's very happy about it because he still cares about his friends. And so they plan it. Game night is here. They come over and they have game night. And the Haitian friend took it upon himself to do a little bit of research while everybody's drunk. And guess what the Haitian friend found in her closet? He found a jar with, I'm not going to tell you what is in there because y'all like to try stuff, but it's some stuff in it with Kevin's name on a paper in the jar. I ain't going to tell you what the rest is. There's also a picture of Kevin in there upside down. Said, okay, bet, I knew it. He took the entire jar with him. Called his mom immediately and said, hey, Ma, remember how I told you my friend, I feel like he under some, look at what I just found. And so his mom told him exactly what to do with it, how to get rid of it. He did all of that after the game night, like when he got home and stuff. The very next day, Evan calls them like, I hate this bitch. I don't know what it is about this bitch, but I fucking hate her. I could not be next to her for another fucking second. Kevin feels like that about her till this day. Even before knowing that, because the friend ended up telling him and stuff like that, because they got into that conversation, the friend is like, I know why you hate her. Look, let me show you. Because he had took pictures before he destroyed it and all of that. Till this day, this girl would make fake pages coming on his page, texting him off of blocked numbers. He literally had to move because this girl couldn't know where he lived anymore. He even got arrested over this. But yeah, that's the story, y'all. See, I gave y'all an almost 10-minute story. But don't forget to get your ebook to prevent yourself from things like this happening. Because these things are real, honey. And don't forget to go to my YouTube channel and watch my compilations in long form so that you can cook, clean, whatever. Who cares? Okay, I love you. Bye.
So y'all have definitely heard of the Weird New Jersey book, but have you heard of the Weird PA book? Because I have a story from when I visited Gettysburg from the Weird Pennsylvania book. We all know that Gettysburg is an old battlefield from the Civil War, and a lot of crazy stuff happened there, and a lot of paranormal explorers like to go there to explore the activity. I'm going to tell you about a time when I went there when I was about 19 years old. So this story actually takes place with me and a couple of my friends, and we went exploring in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Remember, our original plan was to go there and stay in one of the haunted hotels, but we ended up not being able to do that, so instead we just took a walk around the battlefield. I can tell you that every haunted hotel and place that we walked by obviously either gave you an eerie feeling or you were able to hear some of the folklore from the locals. There was places that we walked by when the energy, like the air would just get really hot or it would drop down to really cold. There was times where we could have sworn we saw handprints like appear on some of the windows going past some of these stores and hotels. Anyway, we make it all the way over to the battlefield, and I specifically remember telling my friends, hey guys, do you want to stay till after dark? Remember that some of them were actually scared because they have already been feeling like they were being touched in their back while we were walking through the battlefield. A few of us actually agreed that we were seeing these like apparitions like walking through the woods. I can tell you that when it got dark out, it definitely got a little scarier. Here we are walking through the battlefield, and I can tell you that one of the creepiest things that I heard, let alone saw, but what we heard was, it almost sounded like the sound of a gun, like cocking back, or the sound of cannons going off. Obviously, it wasn't super loud like it was right in our ear. It almost sounded like it was in the distance. Like we thought maybe people in the neighborhood were setting off fireworks. Ended up proving it later that that wasn't the case, but we did continue to walk through the battlefield. And that was before my friend started telling me that he was feeling like something was grabbing his arm. We all obviously stopped in our tracks and we started investigating the area, and it literally sounded like you could hear multiple people walking next to us. You heard these footsteps everywhere, but you couldn't see anything around us. Literally sounded like we were walking with a separate group of friends, but you couldn't see them at all. That was when my friend actually tapped me on the shoulder and said, look, dude, I see something right there in the bushes. I kid you not. This was the moment that literally like the hair on my arm stands up talking about this. You literally saw at the edge of the battlefield, like through the first line of trees, what it looked like was either one or two people just walking through the bushes. At that point, I'm thinking like, guys, that might be an actual person. We are not alone out here. We need to turn around and leave. And a lot of you know from my previous stories, I do not do well with running into people out in the forest. Turns out it wasn't that at all. We literally saw these figures walking through the bushes, and then by the time it got to the other side of the tree, they disappeared. Now, me wanting to investigate, I wanted to go and look around the tree, but when I did, I saw literally nothing there. But if you guys want to have a real lifetime experience with me, join my live stream later today where we're going to go in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania and have a good time. If you have any stories of your own, please put them down in the comments. I would love to read them. Let's get spooky, fam.
Exploring abandoned places gotta be top 5 worst things that you can do. Because what do you mean by exploring an abandoned church at night? You can literally come across this. It all started when this church right here that's located in a small town suddenly decided to close. Like literally, everything was going okay. Boom, the next day the church is closed. Even the priest did not want to explain. So when this happened, everybody who lives in that town was confused. Especially the people who used to go to this church a lot. Because they knew that this church was doing just okay. So what suddenly happened? And you know, if you leave people without answers, they will try to find it themselves. That's exactly what happened. You see, on a random night, 2 guys decided to explore this church and film to see if there is a reason behind this closure. And just like that, they didn't waste any time and immediately got inside. The first thing they noticed when they got inside was the fact that this place stinks. It smells so bad, but you know, they were expecting that because the place is closed and there is no air circulation, so for now everything's okay. After walking for a bit, you know, just next to the entry they found this. These are not instant noodles, these are maggots and worms. You know, just so you can visualize how bad the smell is. Anyway, they tried to not step on anything disgusting, and just like that, they cleared the whole first floor. You know, nothing worth mentioning really, but what really matters is when they go to the second one. Literally 10 seconds after, they both heard a whisper in this place. So they were both like, whoa, did you hear that? Both said yes, but you know, they were not really sure. What they heard was really quiet, so they decided to not leave this place because it could be anything, you know, they were not 100% sure. After that, they went to the other part of the second floor, and this time, unlike the last time, the whisper was loud and clear. Like, you definitely can hear somebody whispering behind this curtain. So this is where one of them picked his balls and decided to go like, this is what he found as soon as he opened the curtain. Like, bro, what is this doing in a church? Well, let me explain. You see, this was some kind of playing space. You know, for children who used to come to this church, they don't know what the priest is talking about. They just come here to play. Well, this was for them. Most important question now, the question that you should ask is, who was whispering? Because there is literally nobody here. That's exactly what the guys wanted to find out. They kept exploring around this area, but they couldn't find anything. And just when they wanted to leave, this right here happened. The little house door was seen shutting by itself.
Okay, this place got abandoned like 3 months ago. Oh my god, yes. Okay, okay. Good? Yeah. The light's the everlasting light. In every church, it's always supposed to be on. It's freezing, actually. Oh. Maggots? Oh my god, it smells. Oh my god. Try to step on. That was disgusting. What the fuck? Let's go upstairs. This is beautiful. What the fuck? What is that? What the fuck? I heard something. Get out. I don't know. I don't know what that's for. Something.
The lesson that you should learn here is to not stick your head anywhere you go. He was literally 2 seconds away from getting touched. Well, not like that. Pause.
Not to get creeped out, let's talk about someone else who tried the man in the fields ritual. And by the way, if you don't know what the man in the fields ritual is, it's essentially where you summon this entity to stand in your backyard while you complete some tasks inside your house. And if you complete it within a certain amount of time, you either get physical safety for a whole year, physical and financial safety for a whole year, or physical and financial safety and no negative consequences for any of your actions for a whole year. So anyway, for storytelling purposes, we will name this person Cora. Cora decided she basically wanted to do the ritual for shits and giggles. She wanted to do the 3-hour version, which is the easiest one, to see if she could get physical safety for a year. I mean, the ritual says you'll go a year without even getting a paper cut. So stubbing your toe, not going to happen. Stepping on Lego barefoot, not going to happen. So at 9 o'clock, she went outside into her backyard and said, but who will scare the crows away? And she said it 7 times. And as soon as she said it the 7th time, she heard,
"That's not your biggest problem."
Scary. But this girl was a Virgo and I'm a Virgo, so I understand. She was meticulous. Actually, I don't understand. Sometimes I understand. She was meticulous and the bitch closed everything she needed to. She did not miss a single piece of Tupperware, any jars, the apps on her phone, a book laying open on the counter. She didn't miss anything. She had a really small house, so she was actually able to finish closing everything super quickly. By the way, that's what you have to do in the ritual. You have to close every single item in your house and you have to have a safe room with a crucifix in it because it's going to be bad news bears for you, probably if you fuck up. But like I said, she closed everything. She was done within about an hour and a half so that at that point, she was actually able to go around again and double check everything. And everything was closed in every drawer and every cupboard and every closet and every space of her house. Even the toilet seat, okay, guys? Even the drain and her sink and in her bathtub. Throughout the 3 hours, she does not look outside. She also doesn't see the ashen man, but she does keep seeing something out of the corner of her eye, and she's not sure if it's just her mind playing tricks on her or if it's the Ashen Man. At about 10 minutes left to midnight, she goes into her safe room with her crucifix and lays down in bed, closing her eyes and her mouth, because you have to do that as well. Creepy. Now, the rules specifically say once you close your eyes, don't open them ever at all until morning. So at some point in the middle of the night, she has no idea what time because she couldn't open her eyes, but she could tell it was still very dark out. So she knew it was not morning. But at one point, she wakes up and thankfully remembers that she can't open her eyes, but she's hearing something and it's terrifying. She can hear footsteps walking back and forth outside of her bedroom door. She said that she thought she was literally going to shit the bed. Like, that's terrifying, guys. I would lose my mind. I would lose it. So creepy. She laid there with her eyes closed, sweating and terrified while she heard the steps going back and forth, back and forth. She doesn't know how long this went on for. She couldn't fall asleep while it was happening, but she thinks it was for about 5 or 10 minutes, nothing too crazy. However, it was, again, walking back and forth past her bedroom door, and then suddenly she heard the footsteps stop and it sounded close, like right near her bedroom door, and she was just holding her breath, laying there with her eyes closed, waiting to see if anything happened. Nothing happened. So eventually she fell back asleep. I don't know how. I would be laying there with my eyes closed until like 6 in the morning. No joke. You know why? I'm a paranormal investigator and I love experiencing paranormal things. Okay. But when you invite something to your home, an entity that specifically is known to you, if you fuck up your ritual, that's terrifying. That's not cool. That's not fun. I don't want to do that. Anyways, the next morning, she wakes up and she's like, okay, I think this ritual is real because there was something walking outside my bedroom door last night. And in her mind, she's like, I've got physical safety for a year. So score. Bob's your uncle. But it's only within a few days that things start to get weird. 3 days since she did the ritual, she's coming home from work, gets inside, and notices that every single drawer, cupboard, closet door, microwave door, everything in the house open. Why? She did the ritual properly. Who's coming back here? Who's coming to hang out? And why are they coming uninvited? Because they were invited the first time. Now they're not invited. Now they're not invited. So she closes all the cupboards, all the drawers, all the closets. The next day she comes home from work. And this is random. Of course, this girl had a locket because that's like such a creepy piece of jewelry, like such a cool, creepy piece of jewelry. But anyway, she had a locket and it had a picture of her grandmother in it who had passed away. She always had it hanging on this little like jewelry tree that she had in her bedroom. She gets home from work. She goes into her bedroom. She's going to change out of her work clothes and notices that the locket is on the ground in the bedroom. And she's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I didn't do anything that would cause this to fall. I didn't even come near my jewelry this morning. I just put my shit on and went to work. Now, the day after the locket is found, she gets home from work and nothing is amiss, but she has this very strong feeling that she's being watched. Anywhere she goes in the house, she feels like there are eyes on her. And she does acknowledge that this could be paranoia, but she doesn't think it's paranoia because of what happens at night. At around 10:30 that night, Cora crawls into bed and decides she's going to read a book. Try to get her mind off of things. Try to calm herself down. So she's been reading her book for about 45 minutes when she hears, guess, walking in the hallway again. And she lives alone. The girl lives alone. The only pet she has is a fucking goldfish. So this is not normal for her to be hearing someone walking in her hallway. The footsteps are the exact same as the night she did the ritual. Back and forth, back and forth. For about 10 minutes, it's time she can look at the clock. So her eyes are open. But there's no sound of the footsteps stopping exactly in front of her door. And eventually the sound kind of just dissipates. So she's able to kind of convince herself that like, maybe I just imagined that, or maybe like I'm crazy and just super paranoid from doing the ritual. The next morning, Cora's heading out to work again. She goes out her back door to go walk to her garage where her car is parked. When she turns around to lock her back door, in the glass of the door, she sees a reflection of something behind her, a scarecrow. And obviously she is startled and whips around and nothing's there. Again, she's like, okay, I could be imagining this. The next day, it's a Saturday. Cora doesn't have work. She spends the morning watching TV, drinking coffee, and then starts doing a little afternoon clean. And the TV is off at this point. She's walking through her living room vacuuming when she sees in the reflection of the TV a scarecrow behind her. She whips around again, startled. Nothing's there. Cora is getting more and more freaked out, and that night she doesn't sleep at all. The next day, which is Sunday, nothing happens. She has a really good day until she goes to bed. She walks into her bedroom, turns off the light, and goes to crawl into bed when she notices a reflection once again in her bedroom mirror, the scarecrow. This is when I would be seeking like spiritual help. I would like be going to anyone I know who knows anything about like spirituality, cleansing, healing, and I'd be like, help me. I fucked up because that's creepy. Anyways, this is Cora's final line of her story and it gives me chills. Every night since then, he's standing closer. I really hope Cora's doing okay. That's all I can say.
If I'm going to be scared, you are going to be scared with me. It is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories, add me on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube, same handle, without further ado. Y'all buckle up for this one. We are leaving this follower anonymous at her request. Let's just call her Kay for the video. To my knowledge, I think I have only ever gotten one other story submission about this subject, and it freaks me the hell out. So Kay said she is 32 now, that this happened when she was 17 or 18 years old. She lived in Charleston, South Carolina. More specifically, she lived on some islands that are like off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. And at the time that this took place, she was living in a trailer park with her grandma and her dad, and it is surrounded by swamp, okay? So one night she gets home, it is already dark out, and because it is kind of like an island, there are not very many street lights or anything around the trailer park that kind of illuminate the area. But she said that when she gets home, she starts heading to her trailer, and her dad kind of approaches her outside. Now, her dad struggled with, like, you know, alcoholism and substances, and so he was, like, intoxicated this night, and he just kind of starts, like, having this drunken conversation with her in the yard before she's able to get up the porch steps. And so she's, like, standing there. She said this is not, unfortunately, unlike, you know, other nights where he's kind of going on like just kind of a ramble, and she, as she's listening to her dad talk, suddenly gets this really bad feeling in her stomach that she can't quite explain. So as this like feeling sets in, she's like, Dad, whatever it is you're trying to tell me, let's talk about it inside. But because he's intoxicated, he's not really listening, he's not having it. So she stands there for another minute, and she glances over, and she says about 3 trailers down, in the darkness, she sees something moving in between these trailers, and she said the only way she can think to describe it is that it was prowling like some sort of a big predator, like a lion or a tiger would be. And immediately her stomach sinks, because whatever it is, she can't see it really well at this point. It is huge, like it's large. And so she said her dad is just like continuing to talk her head off, and she finally interrupts him, and she's like, hey, stop. Like, do you see what I'm seeing over here? And he looks over and he's like, I don't see shit. Dad is even like making jokes, being like, you're probably just stoned. And she's like, no, I'm not. I keep seeing something just like out of my peripheral vision that is like prowling, and it looks like some sort of a really big animal, like I'm scared. He's not listening to her. He's not having it. And so at this point, Kay is like backing up toward the front porch, and she is craning her neck, trying to see if she can see this thing again, when suddenly all the hairs on her whole body stand up when she sees this thing like full on. She said that this thing was standing there at the edge of the darkness. It is almost like half as tall as a trailer, like a single wide trailer. She said that it was, the only way she can think to describe it, an overgrown wolf. And it was, she said, absolutely not any sort of other animal. It's not a bear, it's not a bobcat. It is very clearly like wolf-like features, but it is way bigger than one should be. She said its eyes were even reflecting in the dark like a dog, and it is just like snarling and getting closer and closer to them. And she said, she described her fear. She said, you know, in the cartoons when somebody or something gets so scared that their bones rattle, she said that she physically felt like she could feel her bones rattling in her body. She has never vibrated with fear like that. And she at this point is in a complete panic. She is like begging her dad. She's screaming. She's like, get in the house, like get in the house right now. She's trying to explain to him what is just a few trailers down from them. He will not listen to her. He is just in some sort of a drunken stupor. And eventually she is so terrified, she's like, F you, like if you want to get ate, that is on you. And she runs inside and closes the door, and she said that she sat there almost unable to breathe inside because she is waiting to hear her dad scream, like waiting to hear him being attacked or something like that. And she never did. The night stayed quiet. bed, and eventually she drifts off to sleep. Well, the next morning, she said that even though she and her dad did not have the best relationship, the first thing that she did was go check on her dad, and he was okay. Nothing happened to him. He, I guess, never saw it, but she said to this day, keep in mind, she was like 17, 18 years old when this happened. She's 32 now. This vividly lives in her memory, and she knows that it sounds crazy, but she said this is 100% real, and she doesn't know what to make of it or what to think of it. She also noted that, you know, the history around like Charleston, South Carolina is dark in the first place. Kay and her family are of Geechee Gullah descent, and the history around Charleston, South Carolina is, like I said, it is super dark. It is tragic. It was the epicenter of the slave trade. And so, you know, there are a lot of horrible, gruesome things that happened on that land, a lot of unmarked graves still, and, you know, things like that. And she doesn't know if what she saw is potentially related to that or not, but she said that the land in itself kind of has like a vibe of its own and a darkness or a haunting of its own, and it's, you know, just something that she can't forget about. She eventually for 10 years moved out of state and was living elsewhere, and I don't know if it's been like super recent or not, but she now is living back on that same property, on her grandma's property. And she said that all these years later, she has to go outside at night, she runs. And if she doesn't have to go outside at night, she doesn't. She has never seen anything like that since then, but you guys let me know what you think. That is super freaking creepy, and actually it reminds me of a story that I shared when I first started sharing spooky stories about two girls. If y'all see this, say something in the comments, but they live in the Appalachians. I want to say it's like Virginia, and it was about don't whistle after dark in the woods, right? They are like in their garden and they're whistling their favorite song, and this like wolf-like thing on two legs all of a sudden comes out of the woods full force running at them. And the sister who like told me the story said that she told her little sister like run to the house as fast as you can, and I'm like right behind you. They make it into the house right before that thing gets to them, and it like stalked their property for the rest of the night. And that I think is like the only other, no, there's like one other wolf story that I've ever gotten, but oh man, it makes you think, right? It makes you think, you know. So y'all let me know what you think, and stay tuned for some more spooky stories.
If you scare easily, keep scrolling. And before we start, I need y'all to understand something. Children don't usually have the language to describe their true fear correctly. So when a child repeatedly points out something dark, the same dark corner every single night, and say something evil is watching them, maybe stop assuming it's imagination. And hey toxins, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. So let's talk about the absolute failure of human logic when it collides head first with something genuinely malicious. This story was sent to me by a woman named Sarah, and it details something that happened when her daughter Lily was about 9 years old. Lily was only 9 years old, and what makes this terrifying is that the horror didn't come from neglect or bad parenting. It came from a mother trying to use physical logic to solve a spiritual violation. So it started during the dead of winter in a quiet suburban house that had been only lived in for about 6 months. Every night around 3 a.m., Lily would come running into Sarah's room crying hysterically, saying the exact same thing. Mommy, the devil is sitting in my chair. Not under her bed, not in the closet, and the wooden rocking chair sitting in the corner directly across from her bed, y'all. Now, Sarah said she did what any rational mother would do. She searched the room top to bottom, under the bed, behind the curtains, inside the closet. She checked the locks on the windows and even looked outside thinking maybe somebody had been peeking through the glass. It was nothing, y'all. She said the room was empty. But Sarah admitted something felt wrong in there. She said it wasn't like a scary feeling at first. It just felt wrong. Ooh, chills. She said the room always felt colder than the rest of the house, so she thought it was just that. And no matter how warm the heat was set, she said Lily's room stayed freezing. Still, Sarah convinced herself that it had to been a nightmare until the bruises started showing up on this baby, y'all. She said the first mark appeared on Lily's shoulder blade. She said it was a deep purple bruise, and it was shaped almost like fingers had dug into her skin hard enough to leave like pressure marks. She said Sarah started panicking immediately. She searched the bed frame for nails or sharp corners. She said she checked school records. She even quietly asked Lily's teacher if somebody could be hurting her. There was no explanation. Now, when Sarah asked Lily where the bruises came from, the little girl just whispered, "He grabbed me when I tried to run." Baby, after that, she said things escalated fast. Lily stopped sleeping normally. She became terrified of nighttime, and every evening around sunset, she'll start crying before bed, begging her mother not to make her sleep in that room. And I wouldn't want to sleep in that room either. She said that man in that chair watched her every night without blinking, y'all. And what terrified Sarah the most was Lily described him the exact same way every single time. He was tall, completely black, no face, no clothes, and his eyes looked wet. She said not glowing, not wet, not red, wet. And Sarah said it made her sick to think about it. The third week, Sarah decided that she would stay awake and prove to herself nothing was there. At exactly 3:14 a.m., Sarah was lying in the bed, and every sound inside the house, she said, suddenly stopped. She said the refrigerator hum vanished, the heater shut off, and even the wind outside disappeared. Then came the scratching. She said it was slow and it was deliberate. It was dragging across the floor, and Sarah ran down the hallway towards Lily's room, and before she could even touch the doorknob, Lily let out a scream so violent that Sarah said it didn't even sound human. She said she threw that door open and she froze. Lily was no longer laying flat on the mattress. Her back was bent upward in an unnatural arch, y'all, while her head and feet pressed into the bed like invisible hands were forcing her downward from both directions. She said the wooden rocking chair in the corner was violently slamming back and forth against the wall with enough force to crack the damn baseboard, y'all. And standing beside it was something darker than the room itself. Sarah said it didn't even look solid, y'all. It looked wrong, like a human-shaped hole cut into reality. She said it was taller than the ceiling should have allowed, and it was motionless except that its head was turning towards her. Then Lily started choking. Sarah said she lunged forward, she grabbed her daughter, and the second that she pulled Lily off that mattress, she said the rocking chair stopped instantly. Dead still, y'all. But the room, it didn't even go quiet. Because from the corner near the chair, Sarah said she heard some breathing. She said it was heavy and slow breathing. She said, and it was right beside her. Sarah said she grabbed Lily and she ran into the living room with every light in the house turned on. She said they stayed there until sunrise. And when daylight finally hit the windows, Sarah said she noticed fresh marks around Lily's ankles. She said not bruises. She said this time it was fucking handprints, y'all. She said it was long, dark red, finger-shaped welt wrapped completely around both legs like something had been dragging her backwards across the bed. Sarah said she moved out less than a week later. But years later, she said after Lily became an adult, she finally admitted something she never told her mother back then. And that was every single night before it touched her, the thing in the chair would whisper, your mother can't see me, but she will. Some of y'all think monsters only exist in movies, but ask yourself this. Why do children all over the world describe the same dark figures before they was even old enough to understand fear? Like, I know y'all remember the Hat Man. I used to be terrified of that Hat Man. I know y'all used to tell y'all parents stuff and then they didn't believe y'all. My own kids drew what I thought was a monster that they had made up from their imagination. But guess what it was, y'all? Guess what it was? It was fucking aliens. Serving it black today. I love y'all, and I will see you in the next video.
Tonight's true story comes with a photo. I've attached it as a thumbnail to this video. Be sure to check it out. I wish I had the editing software to clip it in the video. Believe me, I've looked, I've tried. So sorry about that. But this comes from Brittany M. And it happened in 2005 in Saudi Daisy, Tennessee. Now, in the photo, if you look on the wall, you can see it's almost like a negative where the light casts through where it shouldn't and also stays where it shouldn't on the wall. And it looks like a bearded gentleman. You can see barely his ear poking through all that hair. It's very prominent. Well, this light source was a window, and where it came from, it was entirely too tall for a person to be standing there. Well, in the photo, you can see her boy at the time, who's grown now, but like I said, 2005, reacting to what he thought was his grandfather at first. This was his grandfather's place, who's a paraplegic. And of course, that was impossible because this man was standing tall, but did have a very prominent beard. Well, this wasn't the first time that it was seen by any means. You see, Brittany herself had moved out. She was helping take care of her paraplegic father at this place. She had moved out not too long before after seeing this thing. Twice at the foot of her brother's bed. And one time, her brother's best friend, we'll call Jimmy, he woke up and saw this thing and crawled into bed with Brittany. And he caught a lot of flack, you know, for crawling into bed with his grown sister, you know. But Jimmy saw it. Brittany saw it twice. The second time she saw it, the first time she gaslighted herself and tricked herself into thinking that she imagined it. Well, the second time she saw him full on and coming straight towards her and vanished. She said that night she literally beat down her father's door and told him he had a ghost in the house and she was leaving. And that's exactly what she did. She beat a path out of that house and didn't come back. Well, the photo was taken, her granddad, or her dad, the boy's granddad, stayed in that house about another 6 months. And that photo was taken here, and it shows him reacting to whatever figure that is there on the wall. Well, Brittany says she went on to see it one more time back in 2015 in the house that she's currently staying in. Well, she willed it or manifested somehow to tell this thing that it wasn't welcome, it was scaring her, and she hasn't seen it since. So we'll keep sending our positive vibes and prayers, Brittany, that stays happening and you don't see this fellow again. She thought it was a familial spirit, and then one of her friends, after the fact, let her know that her grandfather had passed in that very house. So it's never really been evil per se, just jump scare, kind of scary. But thank you, Brittany, for submitting your photo and your story. Thank you, guys. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. Keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
Have you ever seen a ghost peeking around the corner? Now, these peeking ghosts, or peekers as they're often called, are a type of shadow being. Now, people speculate that these may be the spirit of a person who in life was a very violent or evil person. And when they passed, their spirit that remains has no form. And often what it is trying to do by peeking from behind the door, or sometimes even appearing as a person that is just a pile of clothes, is to try and get your attention and to get you to notice it. And by doing so, right, you are giving power to it to come into your life. Now, there was one such story. There was this teenager who lived with his mother. And one night he's sitting in his room and he's watching television, when out of the corner of his eye, he sees what looks like a person peeking from behind the hallway door. So he looks at the TV and he looks back at the door and it's gone. And then once again, out of the corner of his eye, he sees what looks like a person peeking into his bedroom. Another time, he's in his kitchen, and as he walks past the hallway, he thinks out of one of the bedrooms, he sees a head peeking out at him. But when he looks closely again, there's no one there. And he starts having these experiences around the house, and he thinks that maybe it's only him that sees them. Until one night, he's sitting in his bedroom, and he looks over, and he sees something peek from outside of the doorway. And all of a sudden, his mom comes to the door and is like, "Is everything okay?" And he says, "Yeah, everything's all right, I think." But when he looks at his mom, he sees this thing peek out from behind the doorway real quick. And all of a sudden, he notices his mom just gets this horrified look on her face. And he goes, "What's wrong, Mom? What's wrong?" And she wouldn't tell him. Finally, after a couple days, he gets his mom to tell him why she was horrified that night. And his mom says, "This really weird thing happened when I was talking to you and you were sitting in your bed. I looked over at your closet, and for a second, I seen something peek out from behind the closet door." So one night, he goes to bed, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he looks at the post of his bed, right, the front of his bed, and he sees a face peeking up at him. But this time, he actually notices what the face looks like, and he sees this is a woman with long black hair, no eyebrows, solid black eyes, and no mouth or nose. And after he notices this woman, he said he just starts seeing her in his dreams. He started seeing her everywhere he went. And this spirit was almost like tormenting him. His mother, who was very religious, ends up calling in the neighborhood priest. And he comes in and actually does a exorcism on the boy. And after that, he no longer seen this thing anymore. But he realized if he did see it again, not to look at it. Have you ever had an encounter with a mimic? Now, there was this man named Shane. Shane was from Santa Monica, California. And he said he didn't really believe in the supernatural or anything close to that. He was very, very scientific, and he didn't think this stuff existed. Well, one night, he said he was driving outside of Los Angeles, and he was in this pretty dense forested area, heading back home. He said as he was driving, he noticed out of the corner of his eye something run into the road. And at the last minute, he swerved, but he still hit this thing. And he felt sort of the impact, and it actually caused his car to kind of shift. So he thinks, I've hit a person, I've hit an animal, like, oh no, this is like really bad. He gets out of his vehicle, walks around to the back, walks around to the front, but he doesn't see anything. There's no animals, there's no humans, there's nothing around. So he goes to the front of his car and he starts inspecting, and he does see some significant damage on the hood, like he'd hit something. Now at this time, he has his driver's side door open. And as he's inspecting the front of his car, he hears a loud slamming sound. And when he looks, his door on his car had shut by itself. But as he looks inside the car, he doesn't see anybody. No one has gotten into his car, but something shut the door. So he jumps back into his car and he speeds off. Now, he doesn't tell his wife about any of this because he didn't want to freak her out. This was on a Wednesday. So a couple days later, Friday night, he said him and his wife were asleep. His wife was on the right side of him. Well, in the middle of the night, he awakes to the sound of a noise coming from his doorway. And as he looks over, he sees his wife standing there. And she's kind of got one arm wrapped around the door, and she's turned the opposite direction of him. So he calls to her, honey, what's wrong? Like, are you okay? She doesn't say anything. He goes, honey, like, what's going on? She removes her arm, and she just takes off into the hallway. So he jumps up out of bed, and he follows her. And he follows her right down the hallway into the living room. But as he gets out to the living room, he sees his wife just walking into the wall, going back and then walking into the wall again. She's doing this over and over again. And he goes, honey, like, what is going on? Like, what's wrong with you? And right at that moment, he hears his wife's voice, but it's now behind him. So he turns around, and there's his wife in the hallway. He's like, what's going on? Like, I just seen you in front of me. You were running into the wall. And she goes, what are you talking about? Like, I heard you out here making a bunch of commotion, and I was going to tell you to come back to bed. So he's like, okay, whatever. Now, at this point in time, he still doesn't tell his wife what's going on because he's worried he's losing his mind. A couple days later, on a Monday, he said he worked late that night. He receives a phone call from his wife, and she's like, honey, there's something going on at the house. I hear your voice in the bedroom. I hear this knocking sound, and you keep telling me to come in the bedroom, but I know you're not home, right? And he's like, look, get out of the house now because I am not there. I am at work. So he speeds home and he goes into the bedroom and he doesn't find anything, but the window's open. So finally he tells his wife what's going on. And she says, let's go talk to the spiritual person that I know. So they come over to the house and they do sort of this blessing. And they open up the front door and they say that whatever was there is cleared and it's left through the front door. And they think that works, because the next couple of weeks, nothing happens. Until one night, Shane is driving home from work. And as he's driving, he begins to hear this pounding sound coming from the back of the vehicle. So he pulls over to the side of the road, he gets out of his car, and as he goes near the trunk, he hears his wife's voice saying, "Honey, please let me out." And then he hears this banging sound. But he knows his wife is at home. So he calls her and he speaks with her. And he's like, "Honey, I am hearing your voice in the trunk of this car." So he said right at that moment, he opened the trunk and he felt this rush of wind just blow past him and take off into the woods. And after that, whatever it was, it left him alone. But he certainly felt afraid for his life. Are there giant spiders in Colorado? Now, in the 1800s, there was a story that came out of Chaffee County, Colorado. And it said that some of the townspeople found this mysterious cave. And within this cave, they found these very large spiders that were the size of cats. These spiders were not very normal spiders. Sometimes they acted very intelligently, and they were almost dog-like. Now, it's said that these locals, they would take the webbing from these spiders, which was almost like a pure silk, and they would make rope and clothing. They would even hunt the spiders themselves and make gloves. And the weirdest part about the story is some of the locals were said to have taken these spiders and turned them into pets, and they would use them to sort of protect their house and their livestock. But it said that these spiders were also sometimes aggressive, and from time to time, a person or an animal would go missing, and many people suspected it was these mysterious spiders. Now, there was a story of a prospector named Schultz. Schultz heard from some of the locals about this cave, and apparently there was a very large vein of gold. But he was told by the locals, do not go there because that's where these spiders live, and they do not like people going near this cave. But he was filled with greed. He heads up the mountain, and he ends up finding the cave. For 3 days, he's prospecting, and he returns back to the townspeople, and he tells them, "I found gold, and there's lots of it, enough to make this whole town rich." But none of the townspeople would go anywhere near this cave. And he said to them, "I've seen the spiders. Mostly they hide in the cave. They don't come out during the day. But at night, they come very close to my camp. They've taken one of my dogs. They've almost taken one of my mules. And I'm afraid eventually they will take me." But he was so consumed with greed that he decided to go back. And many days passed. They never heard from the prospector. And after about a week, they went up to the mountain and found this cave. And all they found remaining of him were his bones. It said still to this day in Chaffee County, in the mountains of Colorado, you can see these giant, abnormally large spiders.
I'm generally pretty skeptical when it comes to the paranormal, but when there is a true crime story behind it, there makes me think that there might be something more to it. Crescent Lake in the Pacific Northwest has a pretty crazy history, and it goes all the way back to the Quileute and Klallam tribes. I probably mispronounced that, correct me down in the comments, but there was a bloody war that was happening between the two tribes, and the mountain got mad and broke off a piece of rock from its peak and threw it into the valley, and this created Crescent Lake, according to the legend. Now, this left the area dammed, and both tribes refused to go to the area for many centuries, at least from what I'm reading online. Now, in the 1930s, there was a tavern that was on the edge of Crescent Lake in the northwest part of the Olympic National Park. And there was a barmaid that worked there. Her name was Haley. Now, Haley was very unlucky in love, and she had just ended her second marriage in 1936, but she decided she wanted to give it one more try. She met this man, and his name is Marty Ellingsworth. Now, he was a beer truck driver, and they met at the tavern, and he didn't make it a secret of how he treated Haley. Haley would often come to work with bruises all over her body and black eyes, and she did talk to her coworkers about this, saying that Monty had choked her and broken one of her teeth, or some of her teeth. They had only been married for 5 months when the police were called to the tavern to break up a fight between Haley and Monty in front of the tavern. Then on December 22nd of 1937, Haley disappeared, and Monty told everyone that Haley had run off with a sailor from Alaska. Now, everyone thought this was suspicious, but regardless, Monty was granted a divorce in 1938, and then he moved to California with the roommate of Haley's sister. Nobody saw Haley. She simply vanished. And then in 1940, a body floated to the surface of Crescent Lake. The body was covered in blankets and tied in ropes. Now, that's not the weird part, though. The body had turned into like a rubbery, soapy substance. There was no bloating like you would see other bodies in the water, and it was perfectly preserved, so there was no decay. But she was missing all of her facial features, so there was no eyes, no nose, no mouth. So no one really knew who this was. But there was evidence that this person had been beaten and choked. The medical examiner called it ivory soap corpse, and this was because of the skin's condition. It is a process known as saponification, and it turns fatty acids into soap. So the body had gone deep into the water where it was likely very cold, and the cold prevented decomposition, but then salt and calcium in the water slowly converted the tissue into a material like soap. The body had been weighed down, and eventually the ropes decayed enough that the body was able to float to the surface. Now, they were not able to identify this body through facial features because there were none, so they used dental records, and it turned out that it was Haley. The rope was also a clue because shortly before Haley went missing, Marty had asked the bar tavern owner if he could borrow some rope to get his truck out of the mud. And this rope was 100 feet of rope, and he said that he would bring it back to the bar, but he never did. And so the owner of the bar was able to testify to this, showing that Marty had done this. And it's not a stretch thinking of how he treated Haley. Marty was extradited from California, and he stood trial. He claimed that this wasn't Haley, that he had actually just seen her alive, but Haley's dentist was able to confirm that the body was hers. Now, here's where things get really sad, is Marty only served 9 years before being released on parole. We could say it was a different time, but honestly, I just feel like that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So now here's where we get into the paranormal side of things. Around this area, on the shoreline, people have often seen a ghostly woman standing silently along the shoreline, usually at dusk, or she'll be gliding above the water's surface. Other people have reportedly been hiking in the area and experienced temperature drops and heard faint cries in the night. Other people at the tavern have said that they've experienced flickering lights and footsteps all around. So doors locking and unlocking by themselves. So is this Haley just haunting the place, or what is going on? What are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today, and I have a story that's very scary. I think actually all the stories will be very scary because everybody's having these weird experiences, and this one is particularly creepy, and I'm going to tell you it now. So our follower said, I have a story for you. Don't know what this was, but about 2 years ago, my boyfriend and I was out late. It was Christmas season and it had limes all over. That night, we were in Maraval with some friends, and I was living in Lafayette at the time. It was about 2 a.m. and we decided to head home. Even though it was late, I was up and aware of my surroundings, even though there wasn't any cars on the road. We drove past Maracas heading to Las Cuevas, but my boyfriend told me he was getting a little sleepy and if I wanted to drive. I told him, yeah, that's no problem, because I was ready to reach home. We swapped seats and I began driving. As I drove, I passed a big field on the left side before Las Cuevas car park. I then saw a man quickly cross the road in the distance. I paid no attention until I realized how tall and unhuman this thing was. I slowed down, keeping my eyes on the tall figure. It was about 9 feet tall, dark, with long hands. I was in disbelief, turning to my boyfriend. He was asleep, and the figure then disappeared into someone's yard. I still don't know what I saw that night. Where's that? What all let us be seeing? So at first I thought it was the moon gazer, or what we call the phantom, that is on 4 road junctions, and it's this big tall shadowy figure, but it is described as being extremely tall, that you can't see his head from the waist up, because it's that tall and it goes across the road. However, this sounds like a shadow figure. I don't know what kind of shadow figure, but it does not sound like it's a nice shadow figure. It sounds absolutely terrifying. So let me know, have you all ever seen a tall shadow figure with long hands or any sort of variation in the middle of the night? Let me know.
My mother-in-law couldn't mind her own business. The title of our next scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. Grab a blanket and get cozy because we're about to tell a creepy story. Daniel. He came walking to the door, still dressed from our evening out. What's up? I pointed at the kitchen cabinets. She did it again. He looked to see all of our utensils rearranged. He sighed. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? They're just forks and spoons and knives. You can still find everything. This wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation. His mom wasn't the worst, but she had an annoying habit of snooping around our house and interfering. She'd rearrange things the way she wanted them, heedless of how much more difficult that made things for me. It was like she couldn't help interfering in our life. And I'd maybe be okay with it if Daniel had my back, but he always just made excuses for her. This is getting old. She's your mother. Please talk to her. Honey, you know how she is. I know exactly how she is, which is why you need to talk to her. Why does she even need to have a key anyway? It's for emergencies, honey. Besides, it made her feel included. But she doesn't only use it for emergencies. Another sigh. All right, I'll talk to her. 2 days later, I came home from an evening out with some old family friends. I went to put away the bracelet and earrings I'd worn when I realized that my jewelry box had been tampered with. It was still there, but I could tell that it had been moved, and someone had attempted to open the lock. Daniel. Yes, honey? He asked as he walked in. Look at this, I said, showing him the box and the tampered with lock. What am I looking at? Well, clearly someone tried to force open my jewelry box. I wonder who that might be. Who has the key to the house and has shown any interest in my things? Oh, come on. You aren't suggesting that my mother tried to steal your jewelry. It wouldn't be the first time. Remember that outfit that went missing from my closet last month? The one where I saw her wearing it in the pictures from her night out? I asked her about it. She said you lent it to her. Well, I didn't. Maybe you forgot, he suggested awkwardly. Again, I didn't. Why are you so willing to take her word over mine? Of course I take your word, but she's my mother. You know she doesn't mean any harm. All I know is that she somehow, without my consent, had a key to her house that I bought. This has been a bit of a sore subject for us. Daniel was enough of a traditionalist to have a slight issue with how much of our life I paid for. I didn't mind doing it. I loved him and had plenty of money, but it bothered him, so I didn't usually bring it up. That's not fair. I ask you if giving her that key was okay. It's not really asking if you've already given it to her. He was silent. I'll talk to her, all right? Like you did the last time? He turned around and walked out. It was clear he would never do anything about this, so I'd have to. A few nights later, I came home from a work event. My husband was out of town, so the house was quiet. I went to the bedroom to change and found a sight waiting for me. Sitting on the middle of the floor was my jewelry box. It was fully open, likely because I'd accidentally left it unlocked. The jewelry inside had clearly been rifled through, but that wasn't the biggest surprise. Standing in the middle of the floor was Daniel's mother, impeccably dressed, a shock of look on her face, and her body turned entirely to solid gold. I went over and picked up the stone she dropped in her surprise, putting it back in the jewelry box. I had a feeling this might happen. I'd hoped I was wrong, but I had a feeling I wasn't. But now the problem was solved. I pondered the ancient jewelry box, remembering the story I'd been told when I'd inherited it from my mother, the warnings I'd been given about keeping it in our bloodline, and I read the name etched in Greek into the lid. Midas. Midas was a king from Greek mythology that had the ability to turn anything he touched into gold. It wasn't the spookiest or most graphic story, but I thought it was really well written and interesting. And yeah, it was a little spooky, but it was also fun and it had a touch of mythology, which I thought was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just let me know.
A series of spooky stories except for its women's intuition, part 6. The one I remember the most, I was in elementary school. My mom picked me up middle of the day. As we were walking out, I looked at her and said, Poppy died. He wasn't sick. I had no way of knowing that he suffered a stroke. In the car, my brother turned to my other grandmother and said, Poppy died. When my mom was in the school, my grandmother looked at the time. It turned out that he said it at the exact time they pronounced him deceased. That is eerie. A few weeks or so ago, my boyfriend and his friends decided to go to this party. They were there for only around 20 minutes or so before they decided to leave. As they were driving away from the party, a police car went down the road right to the party. I just have to say this really quickly. I just came across a video that said this is your angel number, pointing to the time. It was 11:03 at the time. I typed in what the angel number was, and I shit you not, it said to trust your intuition. It's 11:07. This was right before I made this fucking video. Is that not crazy? We were living in Japan at the time and my mother-in-law lived in Maine. I shot awake in the middle of the night thinking something bad is about to happen, but convinced myself to calm down and go back to sleep. The next morning while at work, my husband was notified that his mother passed suddenly and we needed to get home to Maine. Her time of death was in minutes of me shooting away. Second one was involving my in-laws just a few years later. My husband and I were driving around where we live now, and I thought, I wonder what would happen to mother-in-law's ashes if their house caught fire. Oh my God. Within days, their house was near a complete loss in the fire. Her ashes were rescued from the fire, in case anyone was wondering. I live in the UK, so we have chippies, chip shops. Where I lived, there were 2 close by. One night I was around 9 years old. I had a very specific dream. I dreamt that my mom had asked myself and my older brother to go to the chippy. It was a Thursday in my dream, so off we go to get the chips. On our way home, we were attacked by an adult man. My brother told me to run while he tried to fight him off. I woke up then panicked. Anyway, a couple of weeks passed, and it was a Thursday. Mom asked me and my brother to go to the chippy, and my stomach dropped. I refused point blank. I said I couldn't go because my brother was going to get hurt if I did, so my brother said, it's okay, I'll go alone, so off he goes. On his way home, an adult man tried to attack him, and he ran home. He was always a speedy person, and because he didn't have me with him, he was able to run instead of trying to protect me. My mom phoned the police, and a man was arrested after mugging 3 people. He matched the description of the man my brother encountered and the man from my dream. When my daughter was only 6 months old, I had a dream that made no sense, but she was sitting in just a diaper and a high chair in the garage, and she was crying because the water was pouring down on her. I woke up with my heart pounding and went into her room to check on her. She was still asleep, but her crib was wet. I picked her up, and the ceiling fell into the crib. A pipe had burst and water collected right over her head. Oh my God. My friends and I were out drinking. One of my friends wasn't feeling well after all the drinks, but we wanted to hit one more club. As we were walking down the street to it, I had a horrible feeling. Everything told me not to go. I managed to convince my friends we should be done for the night because our one friend was just getting sicker from already drinking too much. We went home and slept it off. I woke up the next morning to dozens of missed calls and texts. The Pulse nightclub was the last club we were going to, and we had missed the mass pupure by less than an hour. My friends and family all knew that we had planned to go and had been calling to make sure that we were okay. There would not be a day that passed that I would not think about that night if that were me. That is so crazy. That shit, it was a fucking tragedy. I kept having a reoccurring thought that I was going to get in a car accident for a month. In my mind, I could see my car getting hit and spinning around in a circle. One Saturday, with no one else in my car, after literally just dropping my kid off, I was in that car accident that I saw happening. With my car spinning at a 180, I was rushed to the hospital and underwent testing to make sure that there was no internal injuries. No significant injuries were had, just lots of bruising and 2 fractured ribs, but a tumor was found on my kidney. If it wasn't for that accident, I would have never found the cancerous tumor. My injuries were mild and the car was totaled, but it saved my life because without the accident, I wouldn't have found the tumor. I'm thankful for that premonition of the accident and the accident itself. That sounds like the one where that lady tripped over her dog and smacked her face and then ended up getting that tumor found on the back of her freaking head. Not me, but my mom. Before my dad went out of town, my mom had this really specific dream of him getting into a car crash. He was on his phone, searching for music, swerved to avoid another accident, and went off a bridge. So she asked him to just put on a playlist and leave the phone alone and pay attention to the road. He did what she asked, and on his way back, a car crash happened 2 cars ahead of him, and he was able to swerve to the side in time without going off the bridge. Oh my God. These will never cease to amaze me. Stay tuned for part 7.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my... I didn't think using a Ouija board app at 2 in the morning in the middle of France would even work, but something answered us. This is hands down the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. I still don't like talking about it, but I just need to share. A few years ago, I went to France on a trip with my school. I don't know if it's all the history I already knew about where we were going to make me subconsciously scare myself, but as soon as I got there, it felt weird. The place where we stayed was extremely isolated. There was no nearby town, no houses, no bustle of the city. It was just a very old property surrounded by empty fields and trees. Soon after we arrived, all of the students were split up into their rooms. Each one held about 10 to 12 of us, but My group got lucky and only had 6. I was already feeling off about this place. It was secluded and old, and I had seen too many scary movies. Even the layout of the place scared me. There was a basketball court in the middle of the property, and surrounding the court were the rooms, 3 on one side, 3 on the other, but of course, the room my group was staying in was completely separated from everyone else. It sat behind the basketball court, and it was so far off that the closest building to us wasn't even another dorm. It was an abandoned church that sat on the property that had been left to nature. This thing looked ancient, small, rotted wood, moss growing up the sides. One of the stained glass windows near the top had been smashed open, and its shards of broken glass still clung to the frame like teeth. I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. I felt like something from inside of it was watching us for some reason, but of course, being teenagers, everyone else thought it was cool. That night, after we got back from exploring, everybody was bored. We were all, at this point, just sitting around, talking, scrolling on our phones, trying to entertain ourselves. I'd always been into paranormal stuff, so jokingly, I suggested we download creepy apps and play some creepy games. I didn't expect anything. I wasn't even expecting for them to agree when I made the half-hearted suggestion in the first place, but they did. At first, I thought it was harmless. Charlie Charlie, ghost detector apps, and at first we were all laughing and having a great time with it. And while I was scrolling through apps to see which one would give us our next thrill, I found a Ouija board app. I know how stupid that sounds, but as I scrolled the reviews, I found myself terrified. People were claiming they heard voices, saw figures, had nightmares afterwards. I was spooked, but I still rolled my eyes a little at them. It's an app, after all, so I downloaded it. When you open the app, a page of rules pops up on the screen. Things like never use alone, never disrespect a spirit, always say goodbye. I glanced at it quickly and skipped straight through. We started asking it random questions, and at first the app seemed glitchy, and it kind of solidified my thoughts on it just being a very fake app. Every answer was random, nothing really lined up with our questions, and random names would come through unprompted. But pretty quickly, things started getting weird. It was late by this point. Everyone else on the property had gone quiet. The room had only one dim lamp, and on the outside, everything was pitch black, except for the outline of that church across from us. I asked the app one last question before we decided we'd shut it off. What's your name? The planchette slowly moved across the screen and spelled out Veronica. I froze. Just a few days before that trip, me and one of my friends had watched this horror movie called Veronica, about a girl using a Ouija board. Because of the coincidence, I remember saying, okay, that's a bit creepy, but I still wasn't convinced, so I kept going. That was the worst mistake I could have made. I asked, are you evil? And the app answered, yes. Everybody in the room started yelling at me to stop messing around, but I laughed it off and asked one more question. Prove that you're here. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked on the door. Every person in the room went dead silence and slowly turned toward it. That thing that separated us from whatever was out there. One of my friends whispered, don't open it, but I had to. And standing on the other side was one of the property chickens. I sighed in relief because I quickly realized how dumb this all was. But it was just standing there, completely still, just staring at us. Also, it was the middle of the night. The chickens shouldn't be out, and not this far out at least. So I slowly shut the door, came back to my phone, and asked, are you outside? It answered, yes. I slammed my phone down so hard I almost dropped it. And then suddenly the app started counting down. 10, 9, 8. The numbers appeared one after another across the screen, and everybody started panicking. What does that mean? Turn it off. But someone said, no, wait, let's see what happens. So the countdown kept going. By the time it got to 5, the temperature in the room had gone completely cold. When it got to 2, I was about to close the app, when the entire screen started glitching violently. The planchette spun around in circles, and then my phone completely shut off. Dead. Wouldn't respond, wouldn't turn back on, nothing. At this point, we were genuinely terrified, so we decided to just go to sleep and deal with it in the morning. One of my friends asked if we could leave the bathroom light on because everyone was too scared to sleep in total darkness, so we did. I remember laying there, staring toward the bathroom while everybody else tried pretending that they weren't scared. And then, click. The bathroom light turned off. Every single person sat upright almost instantly. What was that? Who turned it off? But I had been staring directly at the bathroom. Nobody had moved. Nobody had gotten out of bed. The switch had flipped off by itself.
Imagine grieving a life that never existed. Hi everyone, welcome back to Candlelit Whispers with Amanda. Today we have an interesting story that I found on a thread that reminds me a lot of the Reddit lamp story. When I was 19, I got into a car accident. Late at night, empty road, and I saw headlights drift into my lane. I jerked the wheel and everything went black. Suddenly, I woke up and I was back in my apartment, like nothing had happened. No hospital, no crash. Normal life. I thought that maybe I had imagined it, so I moved on. A few months later, I met Hannah. She was everything, funny, smart, and beautiful. A few years later, we got married and we had a daughter named Lily. She had Hannah's dark hair and my eyes. Every morning, she ran into our room, jumped on our bed, and it felt so real, like completely real. Years passed, years, birthdays, Christmas mornings, family vacations, everything. Arguments, movie nights on the couch, helping Lily with homework, and teaching her how to ride a bike. It was almost an entire life, and I loved every second of it. Then one night, Hannah and I were sitting on the couch after Lily went to bed. Everything was quiet. Then she looked at me, and something felt wrong. She looked heartbroken. She grabbed my hand and started crying, and then whispered, "You have to wake up now." I laughed and thought maybe she was joking, but she squeezed my hand tighter, tears running down her face, and said, "I've been trying to wake you up for hours." My stomach dropped, and I asked her what she was talking about. Then Lily appeared at the end of the hallway, just standing there looking at me, and she said, "It's okay, Dad. You can go." The wall started shaking, the lights went out, and the whole house broke apart. Hannah was sobbing, still holding my hand, and the last thing she said was, "I'm sorry we weren't real." Everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, machines beeping, my mom crying beside me, and they told me I had been unconscious for 2 days. But it felt like I had lived 10 years. That was 12 years ago. I'm married now, and I have a son, and I love my life. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a little girl laughing from the hallway. And just for a second, I miss the daughter I never had. Imagine grieving a life that no one remembers but you. I can't even imagine how heavy that must feel, even if it was a coma dream. Just to know that you thought that was part of your life, but it wasn't. But you let me know what you think about this story in the comments below.
An emergency alert woke me up at 2 a.m. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket, get cozy. I'm about to read a creepy story. The emergency alert woke me up at 2:17 a.m. Do not look outside. I thought it was fake until my phone buzzed again. Same message. Then my neighbor started screaming. Her screaming stopped mid-breath. Silence so sudden my ears rang. I checked the peephole. She was there, in the hall, standing perfectly still, staring at my door, at me, unsmiling. Her irises were unnaturally large, like black holes swallowing the whites of her eyes. My phone blared again. Do not let them see you look. The knob twitched, slowly, like someone, her, testing if I'd locked it. A voice came through the door, my voice. "It's okay, you can open it." Her eyes never left the peephole. It was still my neighbor, but the voice kept talking, and it knew things only I would say. "They copy what they see," the alert said. "Do not show them your face." Something scratched gently at the door, patient, curious. The scratching stopped. Footsteps moved down the hall. Then every apartment door opened at once, muffled stomping on the hallway carpets. I heard my voice echo through the building, dozens of me, laughing. My phone rang one last time. "We are sorry. They can use reflections." I read it in the dark screen, and my eyes appeared behind the text. expressionless, enlarged black irises staring back. I dropped the phone. The screen went black. The face didn't disappear. My face, my irises flooding my eyes like black water. It stayed floating in the glass, detached from my face, practicing expressions I hadn't made yet. Still watching, still learning. I felt a pull, a nudge. As I reached for the doorknob, my body no longer mine. That is so creepy, but let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own that you'd like me to read, just let me know.
In September of 1934, a young man was walking along the shores of Lake Erie when he made a chilling discovery. He found the remains of a human woman, but at the time that she was found, it could hardly be described as a body anymore. The only parts that were still there were the lower torso, and it was amputated at the knees. There was also a chemical that was found that was present on the skin, and it turned the skin red and leathery. Unfortunately, this body was never identified, and they never found the rest of her. She was dubbed the Lady of the Lake and taken to the morgue and then forgotten for several years. Just 1 year later, a group of teenage boys found another body. This time it was a headless body at the bottom of a hill in Kingsbury Run in Cleveland. This body would be identified, and it was 28-year-old Edward Andrassy. He was only wearing a pair of socks at the time that he was found. Now, for many years, Edward was considered the very first victim of the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, or the Cleveland Torso Murderer. But later on, they would connect the first body that was found to the same serial killer. Now, from September of 1934 until August of 1938, 13 other bodies were found. All of these bodies were found in kind of the same condition. Some were missing their heads, some were missing their limbs, and they all came from lower class societies. And in all of the cases, the cause of death was either decapitation or it was dismemberment. And apparently I am not censoring myself today, but this case is pretty bad. Some of the bodies were found together, like they were able to put them together pretty quickly. Others were like a jigsaw puzzle that they had to put together. Sometimes the body parts were never located. Sometimes they found full bodies. It was just pretty bad. Now, there were two bodies that deviated from the typical MO that they were seeing with the Cleveland Butcher. These two victims were victim number 9, and they were found with the abdomen gutted and the heart ripped out. The 10th victim was found with drugs in her system, but she was still found in the same state. Now, they do believe that this might have been because she was an addict. That has not been ruled out. They don't think that the butcher actually, or they assume that she was an addict. They don't believe that the butcher would have been the one to do that to her. Now, out of all 13 victims, only 3 were identified, and only 2 100% positively were identified. We already talked about Edward Andrassy, but the other one was Florence Polio, and I might have said that incorrectly. Correct me down in the comments if I am wrong, but she was the 3rd body that was found. They do speculate that the 8th body that was found was that of Rose Wallace. This is the only photo that I could find of her, and I'm actually not entirely sure that this is her. But the only way that they were able to identify her was through uncorroborated dental records, so they're not 100% positive. The craziest thing about this case is that there were only 2 arrests during the entire investigation. Safety Director Elliot Ness got involved in 1936. Now, he was infamously part of the Untouchables, and they were a group of federal law enforcement agents that worked to take down Al Capone. People believed that he would be the way that they were able to find whoever was doing all of this. What's crazy is that the last 2 victims were found in 1938, and they were found buried wrapped in a man's double-breasted blue blazer and an old quilt. But they believe that where the bodies were dumped was intentional because you could directly see the dump site from his office. 2 days after these bodies were found, Ness and 35 other officers raided Kingsbury Run, which was the home of basically unhoused people or people who did not have homes. They gathered together 63 men and then burned it all down. Just a few days after this raid, a doctor named Francis Sweeney was arrested, and they believe that he was involved in the Cleveland Torso murders. He was a medical soldier in World War I, and he was in charge of a lot of amputations that happened on the field. He was interviewed by Ness, and he was even given 2 polygraph tests that he failed. But before he could be tried, it was found out that he was actually related to one of Ness's political opponents, Congressman Martin Sweeney. Ness then realized that there was no way that he would be able to convict him, and so he let him go. Then in 1939, Sheriff Martin O'Donnell, he would arrest a man named Frank Dolezal. Now, the reason that he was arrested is that he was first arrested for the murder of Florence, but then they also found out that he was also acquaintances with Edward Andrassy and Rose Wallace. So he knew 3 of the people who had been identified whose lives had been taken. So this led people to believe that he might be the guy who was doing this, but he was just a poor bricklayer. Now, police did say that he did confess, but it seems as if maybe he had been coerced into confessing. Unfortunately, he would take his own life in his cell before he could be tried, and when he was found, he had several bruises all over his body as if he had been beaten, almost as if he had been beaten into a confession. During his autopsy, it was revealed that he had 6 broken ribs, so these beatings were pretty bad. And it was later also revealed that the sheriff was the only one who thought he was guilty of these murders. And unfortunately, that's where the story ends, because no other bodies were ever found and no one else was ever arrested, and nobody knows what happened. So what are your thoughts? Do you think we'll ever get answers to this, or is it all just going to go cold forever? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more true crime.
Did y'all see the video of that creator that ended up at a vampire house in Baton Rouge? Most people think all the vampires in New Orleans. I feel like when you step outside of New Orleans and go to the other parts of Louisiana, things definitely get weirder, for sure. So the name of this guy name is Jigga Man, so you guys can go look it up if you want to. Now, according to him, he works as a delivery driver in Louisiana. He ended up delivering to a house that's outside of New Orleans. So if you're not from the area, it's about like an hour outside of New Orleans. When he pulls up to the house, gang, he immediately notices something strange. There's no lights on anywhere in the house. You know, so your automatic thought would be maybe the people are asleep that ordered this food, right? Because the whole house looked dead silent. No porch light, no type of activity, right? Now, most people would probably leave the food at the door and hurry up and go. Most people, I would have been out of there. I don't even play like that. But he had to still complete the order. So he walks up to the house holding the food and the door slowly opens by itself. Nobody there. No footstep, no voice, no nothing. Just a dark house and the door wide open out of nowhere. Gave me Addams Family vibes, you feel me? When I heard this story, I immediately thought of their house. So I could see in the story, Jigga Man started feeling like something wasn't right. That's called your intuition, your discernment. Then finally, he sees a woman walking slowly down the stairs from complete darkness. And according to him, she never spoke once, not one word. And then something happened to him that stressed him out so badly, I would have just completely dropped the food and ruined their dinner. Or maybe Jigga Man is the dinner, who knows? Maybe she ordered him, unbeknownst to him, of course. He said in his mind, he was able to communicate with her. He remembers thinking, "Can you hear me?" And she responded back, "Yes," using telepathy. And if you guys been following me for a while, y'all know talking to Rich B, Senora M, who is a vampire, you learn a lot. Trust me, when you learn the things about vampires they have to teach, you're never gonna look at the world again the same. Trust me. So the second that she responded to him, then he realized what it is and what it ain't. Survival mode kicked in. And y'all know my survival mode would have been kicked in, 5 minutes into this story? Y'all know I wouldn't even made it this far, to be honest. Thank God for certain. Y'all imagine how many creatures and entities I probably avoided just from seeing or feeling anything weird. Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, there's no investigation going on. What? So as he handed over the food and turned around and tried to walk away quickly, he says as he was walking to his car, he kept hearing a female voice in his head telling him, "You forgot your tip, you forgot your tip, you forgot your tip." Now listen, most delivery drivers, they're gonna turn around for their tip. They're not even far. He didn't even get in the car yet. Not him. This is where I 100% agree with him. Tip? Tip was to keep his life. Talking about tip. She about to turn him into some beef tips. Nah, I'm out of there. I completely agree with you, brother. That man got in his car and left. So after he told his story online, you guys on this internet started to ask him where the house is located. Are y'all okay? That's the worst thing you could do. Just think of it. Why would y'all be looking for any supernatural creature or entity unprovoked? I'm not Sam and Dean Winchester. What's wrong with y'all? Some of y'all think it's a joke until you pull up somewhere you were never supposed to be. Y'all will learn one day why I'm a homebody. nobody. Not gonna catch me in too many public places. And by the time y'all think y'all surprising someone or something, they already know you there. They already done know you coming. Even if you guys don't believe his story, respect the possibility it could be real. Don't show up at nobody's house. What? Is this like a new age thing? I'm confused. Supernatural or not, I'm not showing up at nobody's house. What? And I'm never telling no one what to personally believe. Y'all know me. I just get up here and tell y'all story, and then usually y'all have a really great sense of discernment, so I really don't have that problem up here. But people are way too quick to call anybody crazy or say they're on drugs or drinking. That's what a lot of y'all said about this man. And anytime y'all hear something unusual and out of the norm, y'all don't have to go to that. That's like insulting someone's intelligence. This creator, just like me, he don't do drugs, he don't drink. So it's just funny to me. Most of the people that indulge in those activities are in the comment telling us we're on drugs or we drinking. What? Y'all see my skin? The only thing I'm on is water. Because sometimes people just actually trying to warn y'all about experiences they can't explain. Trust me, I get emails every day from my supporters, which actually is the whole engine to my content. And whether you believe in vampires, entities, psychic manipulation, or not, this man in this story genuinely looks disturbed. I could tell he's one of those people that lived in Louisiana his whole entire life. Nothing really weird happened until that point. And again, I'm going to tell you guys, this is a married man, a husband, a father. He doesn't drink, he doesn't do any drugs. So if you ask me, maybe some doors are better left unopened, especially the ones that open by themselves. I'm Cube of Lore to be exact. This is Forbidden Lore Season 2. Vampires. And if you like content like this, and you want to stay on this side of the algorithm, don't forget to engage from the bottom. I already know, repost, save, comment, and like. And of course, if you new here, don't forget to press that follow button. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Don't forget to tap in with me across all social. It's Cube Oxley, CUBEOXLEY. And don't forget, if you like vampire stories like this, my book Ancestral Shadows, which is a dark fantasy, will be dropping this summer. And don't forget, it's all for entertainment purposes, all allegedly hypothetically speaking. I don't know nothing about vampires. Alright, make sure y'all call me back later. Peace. Ashe.
I wanted to share one of my real experiences from when I was younger. I have quite a few, but this is one that has always stuck with me. When my little brother was about 3 years old, something in him changed. Before that, he was full of life, loud, talkative, and just a normal little boy. But then, almost out of nowhere, he stopped talking to everyone outside of our immediate family. He would only speak to me, my siblings, and my mom. No one else. Not our dad, not extended family, and even to this day, it's still hard for him. Around the same time, he started waking up in the middle of the night screaming. He was absolutely terrified of the dark. He would point into dark corners and cry like he was seeing something we couldn't. Even small things like a bump in a blanket would scare him. He would either pat it down quickly or jump away from it completely, just staring at it in fear. We couldn't even drive with him at night because of how dark it would get inside the car. This went on for years, but one night in particular is something I'll never forget. After my parents divorced, we were living in a small apartment with my mom. Just me, my little brother, and my other siblings. I shared a bed with my mom and my little brother. My brother always slept in the middle, between us. One night, I suddenly woke up to a sharp pain in my arm, and at the time, I heard screaming. When I opened my eyes, I saw my little brother clinging onto my arm, digging his nails into me as hard as he could. He was screaming and staring into the darkness like something was right there in front of him. The room was pitch black. I remember feeling completely frozen, like I couldn't even move. And then, out of nowhere, I saw him get yanked from under the blankets. He had been lying in the middle of the bed, closer to the headboard, but somehow he was pulled toward the foot of the bed and fell off. It didn't make any sense. There is no way he could have moved like that on his own. I just remember sitting there, completely petrified, trying to process what I had just seen. My mom jumped up and turned on the light, and my brother was on the floor crying and screaming hysterically. We didn't go back to sleep that night. My mom just rocked him until he finally calmed down. To this day, I still can't explain what happened that night. and it's only one of many experiences we had in that apartment. Years later, now that my brother is in his 20s, I finally asked him about that night, if he even remembered it, because it's honestly one of the scariest moments I've experienced. He told me that he does remember. In fact, he said he remembers a lot from when he was little, but he just doesn't like to talk about it. But he did tell me about that night. He said he woke up because he had a strange feeling and he could hear voices. When he opened his eyes, he saw what he described as shadow-like figures all around the bed, surrounding us. He said they were yelling and saying things he couldn't understand. And according to him, they were the ones pulling at him, like they always tried to do. He told me he still doesn't know what they wanted, but either way, he never wanted to find out. And honestly, that just made everything even harder to explain.
Series of spooky stories except for its women's intuition, part 5. My aunt's father-in-law passed away in her home. The days leading up to him passing away, I kept waking up at 3 a.m. 3 days straight. I kept waking up at the exact time. The third day we had dinner at the table, and I remember mentioning, has anyone else woke up at 3 a.m. as a joke? My mom looked at me, so did my sister, saying that they have as well for 3 days. The next day we get a call that my aunt's father-in-law passed away at 3 a.m. Women, women, women. One day I was laying in bed talking to my mom. The next thing I knew, I could smell my great-grandma. I kept telling my mom that my blanket smelled like her, which was super weird because she had passed many years before. The next morning, my mom came in my room again telling me that her friend's mom had passed the night before. I've never met this woman, nor did I know that she was sick. Did your great-grandma know her? Maybe there was a connection? When I was in college around 2018, 2019, I kept having dreams about suddenly having to be packed up and driving home. I was always panicked and trying to get home. I would get lost on the drive that I knew super well. It felt like I was moving slower than molasses. Sometimes I'd try to eat in the cafeteria, but the options were limited or they wouldn't let us. Then 2020 and COVID happened. It was literally what happened in my dreams. Couldn't eat in the cafeteria, got rushed off campus back home. The drive home felt so slow and long because we had no idea what was going to happen next. Oh, and 2020 in itself was a fucking nightmare. My grandfather was very supportive of me using my intuition. I would go on the road with him, and fast food was the go-to place for truck drivers. One day, walking in to stop and eat, I stopped him in between the two doors going into the dining area and told him that the young woman sitting with her parents, that she was about to tell them that she's pregnant. He said, let's sit close enough to hear. A couple minutes after sitting down with our food, she told him. He just gave a big, proud smile. And shout out to him for encouraging that, because intuition literally saves lives. I've had premonition dreams since I was 8 years old. However, I woke up on Mother's Day 2019 feeling off, like something bad was going to happen that day. I spent lunch the day before with my mom, so I just went to work. On the way to work, I called my mom to say Happy Mother's Day and that I loved her. She said, love you too, and hung up. She called me back, but it was a shuffled noise like a pocket dial, so I just went to work. The whole time at work, I felt dread. Then the girl from the main office came up to me and said that there was an emergent call. It was my mom's friend saying that my mom had fallen down the stairs of the house. I tell my manager and fly to the hospital. The whole way, the feeling of dread intensified. I parked and stepped out of the car, and before I could turn around, my dad grabbed my shoulder and said that she's gone. We lost her. And he hugged me. They lived in a house in stilts, and she had fallen on the stairs because her heart basically gave out. Lupus had attacked her lungs, making her heart swell. I'll never forget that day. I was the last person she talked to before she passed away. And then getting that pocket dial. Oh my God, that is so sad. When I was an RA, I woke up from a dead sleep at 3 a.m. with something in my head screaming to check on a resident of a floor 2 down from mine. I had only met her a few times at socials earlier in the semester and hadn't spoken to her outside of that. I tried to roll back over, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. I finally got up and went down to check on her. She had attempted to unalive herself, and the paramedics said that she was only minutes away from passing if I hadn't called. I'm so glad I didn't go back to sleep. Holy shit. That one gave me chills. Come back for part 6 later tonight.
It sounded just like my mom. Story time, the person who submitted this says that I can use her name, but I cannot tag her. So Leah was spending the weekend at her grandmother's house. Her grandmother lives in New Mexico, in a very rural part of New Mexico that is surrounded by very heavy wooded forests. Like the whole back of the house is just like thick trees. The day that Leah got to her grandmother's house, she spent most of the day playing outside with some of the neighborhood kids. Once it started to get dark out, she went back to the house, had dinner with her grandmother, and they got settled in her room. At about 11 p.m., she's laying on her bed, just scrolling on TikTok, when she hears something that literally sends chills down her spine. clear as day, she hears her mom's voice calling her from outside. Every alarm bell started going off in Leah's head because she knew that her mom was hours away, that there was no way that it was her mom outside of the room. So she decided to just kind of quietly get out of bed and peek through the blinds and look out into the backyard, but she sees no one standing there. Then she hears it again. She hears, Lele, come here, baby. Now, mind you, her mom is the only person that calls Leah Lele. So this thing was literally using the nickname that her mom had given her. I'm getting chills. Leah then decided to text her grandmother and asked if maybe her mom had come back early, and her grandmother quickly responded with, no, why? Just then, Leah hears the voice once again coming from the woods. This time it says, come on, sweetheart, hurry. Everything then goes completely silent, and it was almost like the crickets stopped cricking, like the wind stopped howling, like everything was just dead silent. Leah looks over at the window once again and sees a handprint, like an invisible handprint on the other side of the window. This sends her screaming straight into her Nana's room, where she runs in and slams the door. Her Nana tries everything that she can to try to calm her down, but they decide they're going to deal with this in the morning. The next morning, they go outside and they check around the window where Leah's room was, and they find barefoot prints on the mud facing towards Leah's bedroom window. They also see the handprint, and they see these jagged edge scratches on the tree that was right outside of Leah's bedroom window. Leah's grandmother never wanted to use the word, the actual word, because she never wanted to say it out loud, because saying it out loud literally gives them power. But never again was Leah allowed to sleep in that room with the window open, because she had the window open. And two, they ended up sprinkling some sort of powder near the window that is supposed to make these things not want to come near you.
Dr. Benjamin Rush, founding father, signer of the Declaration of Independence, and the man American psychiatry calls its father. In part 1, the problem was in your soul, and in this era, the experts have decided that the problem lives in your body, specifically your blood, your circulation, your energy, and an overheated system that needed to be reset. How do you reset a person, you ask? Well, according to Rush, a good old purge. And that meant bloodletting, which is a fancy name for bleeding. They did this often with leeches, blistering the skin and draining the body until the patient was too weak to be agitated. So what do you do if that doesn't work? Well, it's time to purge some more. At this point, Rush would prescribe mercury or arsenic or strychnine. These are all poison, but he'd use these to force violent vomiting and days of fasting. Because the thinking behind this was that you had to empty the body before you could fix the mind. What happens if that doesn't work? So if chemistry failed, you turn to engineering. Rush built something called the gyrating chair. So he'd strap the patient in and he'd spin them around until they got dizzy enough to settle down. The father of American psychiatry would treat mental illness by spinning you in a chair until you passed out. He created a merry-go-round. These men weren't grifters in the way that you would picture. Rush genuinely believed he was helping. He treated patients that no one else would touch. He was kind to them for the standards of the time. It doesn't change the fact that he still poisoned them and spun them around. Here's a pattern throughout all of these treatments. Every one of these cures had the same tell. Success was measured by whether the patient got quieter. Not better, quieter, easier to manage. Oftentimes, many of the people coming out of these treatments were considered more like pets. You took care of them and they were sweet and meek, and that was the best outcome they could hope for. I think people underestimate the power of annoyance in society. I think that needs to be studied. Follow for part 3.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
So the question then is, how do you do this? The answer is you don't, because you're a normal person blessed with common sense and without a sick and twisted mind. On a regular Wednesday in February of 2026, a mother walks into a police station to sit down for an interview. She's ready to talk about something that happened a while back. The story is, she had a boyfriend, she's an adult, he's 41 years old now. They met, got along, started dating, and it really worked out because she had children and he had 2 daughters of his own. So they just kind of had things in common. He also happened to be a middle school teacher at her daughter's school. In fact, he was the daughter's teacher, which was cool because not only did they work on having this loving relationship, but the daughter also saw him often. Her kids spent a lot of time with him outside of school, and throughout the course of their relationship, they just kept getting closer and closer. So much so that when it got to be winter break, the woman and her kids spent the entire 2 weeks at his house. The man's name is Daniel Lalieve. Daniel was a teacher at a middle school in Central County, Florida. I believe it was in a suburb just outside of Orlando. Thankfully, he will never step foot in there again. And if you didn't know him, you could think that he was just a regular middle school teacher, trusted with children every single day, part of the community, decent guy. But according to the allegations against him, Daniel is the farthest thing away from a decent guy. What investigators have alleged is that Daniel was not only a teacher who crossed a line with a student, but he was a man who built an entire plan, deliberately, methodically, and patiently around gaining access to a child. So it was October of 2023 when Daniel began dating the mother of one of his 13-year-old students. Like I said, things were going well until they weren't, because there was something concerning about the attention that Daniel gave the 13-year-old girl inside and outside of the classroom. Call it what it is, it was grooming. At school, Daniel and the victim spent time alone in his classroom before and after school. He would ask her to stay longer than any of the other students would. He had a designated drawer in his desk specifically for her, filled with her perfume and a blanket. He made scheduling changes to have her added to more of his classes so that he could spend even more time with her. He allegedly held her hands, hugged her, and at times rubbed her thighs during the times that they were alone. And then came the secret communication system, because Daniel is an adult man. He has a brain. He uses it for all of the wrong reasons, it seems, but he knows right from wrong, aka he knew that talking to the 13-year-old girl as much as he wanted to would be unacceptable. So he decided that the next best thing to do was to teach her Morse code, and he did. He taught her with the goal of being able to communicate with one another undetected. He also went out of his way to set up what has been described to be, quote, throwaway email accounts and secret websites so that he again could contact her without anyone noticing. He also allegedly opened up a bank account in her name and added money to it. And when he would call and text her late at night, he quickly became controlling in the way that he would tell her to delete certain messages. And I say controlling because, again, he is a grown man and the child is a 13-year-old girl who probably did not understand the gravity of what was happening nor what Daniel's intentions were. On top of that, this is not only her mom's boyfriend, but this is also her teacher. So she could have just felt like she had to go along with things, not to disrespect him. Whatever the case, she was a child. But the most disturbing allegation comes from what took place the night before Christmas Day back in 2023 when the victim and her mother were staying at Daniel's home for break. In the middle of the night, the 13-year-old girl got up to use the bathroom. She left the door unlocked, thinking that everyone in the house was asleep, but she was wrong because Daniel was awake and he followed her into the bathroom. When he walked inside, he told her to remove everything that she had on, forced her to lay on the bathroom floor, and then he S8'd her. It lasted for about 10 minutes in which neither of them said a word. When it was over, he got up, he told her not to tell anyone what happened, and he walked out. And it sounds like very soon after, the girl told her mom what Daniel had done to her. That ended up ending the relationship between him and the mom because she broke up with him. But another shocking detail comes from Daniel's behavior after the breakup, because when he saw the 13-year-old girl post-breakup, he told her that he only got into a relationship with the mom to be able to get closer to her. So that same day in February of 2026, after authorities held that interview with the mom, they interviewed the daughter, and it's during that she told them what happened in the bathroom at his house during winter break. Daniel Lalieve was investigated by the school board twice back in 2024 due to allegations about questionable conduct. Neither investigation resulted in criminal charges at the time. However, he was placed on administrative leave in April of 2026. The county public schools confirmed that he ultimately decided to resign before he could be fired in 2024. So he quit, and he was then told that he was not going to be eligible for rehire. Fast forward to this year, earlier this year, more than 2 years after the SA, the victim and her mother came forward, and the victim disclosed everything during a forensic interview with investigators, and then police moved quickly. On Monday, March 30th of 2026, Daniel Philip Lalieve was taken into custody from his house in Florida. He was arrested, charged, and held without bond. A judge ordered him to remain in custody at his brief court appearance. So as of now, the latest update that I could find is that he is still being held without bond, but no trial date has been set. However, two things that you guys are probably thinking. One, why did so much time go by in between when things took took place in 2024 to the arrest in 2026, and to what can we really expect to happen with this case? To answer number one, I assume the time gap was just because of how the process of these types of cases goes. Obviously, Daniel and the mother broke up back in 2024, and that was also the year that he quit before he could have been fired. But had the mom and or the daughter been in contact with law enforcement about Daniel back then too? I'm not sure. But before making an arrest, authorities would have had to sort through the evidence, the bank account, the different interviews, finding deleted and or hidden emails and messages. That all takes time, obviously, to gather together, but it's important to make sure that when the arrest does come, they have enough to keep him in custody. But I can say for certain when the first time was when the mom and the daughter got in contact with the police. As far as number two, because there is not forensic evidence in this case, and most of the evidence does come from witness statements, my guess is that even they will not want to, they will have to have the victim, the daughter, testify on the stand against Daniel, which is the thing that you kind of want to avoid, right? Because you don't want the kid to have more trauma than they already do. But that might be what ends up happening. Regardless, a good thing is that he has been charged with first-degree felonies, so hopefully there is justice that is served. That's all from me today. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Has anyone else seen the body cam footage from Mackenzie Sharilla's arrest and noticed this kind of ghostly whisper happening?
That's your head going in. I don't watch dog. I'm not gonna hurt you. You okay?
I guess Dom's sister is the one who actually pointed this out, and if you listen to the tape, it sounds like the voice is saying, "She killed us." "She killed us" is literally said right after the officer says to Mackenzie something to the effect of, "I don't want to hurt you." Now, after this was pointed out, some people said that the officer must have heard it too, because it sounds like he says, "What was that?" right after the voice says, "She killed us." But when I first listened to the audio, it kind of sounds like the officer is just asking Mackenzie, "You okay?" Whether he noticed it or not, the fact that this was picked up on body cam footage is really crazy. And even if you don't believe in the paranormal, first responders and police officers are usually the first ones to admit that the supernatural does exist, because they've seen or heard far too many things that can't be explained. So let me know in the comments what you think of this. Did you hear the voice in the body cam footage? And do you think it belongs to one of the boys?
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this lady that decided to go and use her womb for ritual so that she can have honey. So my grandmother was the one that told me this story, and because I thought that people only get money through snakes and all of that, and she was like, no, there was this lady that she knew, blah blah blah. I'm gonna act like I was there, don't get confused. So this lady and her husband were very, very poor, and she happened to get pregnant, and now she realizes that, like, we are suffering. Now we're bringing another human into this world. No, we need to make a plan. She proposes the idea to her husband. The husband's like, no, God is gonna provide, we just need to keep working, he's gonna hear our prayers one day. And baby girl was not having it. She was just over it at this point. So this one time she saw it with a friend of hers, and the friend obviously tells her, like, there are people that actually do this and that using their wombs. And she's like, really? She's like, yeah, hey, it's crazy, I've heard about it, but I've never really seen anybody that's done it. So she's kind of like, She takes this information, goes to a witch doctor, and tells the witch doctor, listen, I'm pregnant, I want to sacrifice this child so that I can have money. And the witch doctor is like, no, I can make it even better for you, just give me your womb. And she said, She agrees, and the witch doctor is like, okay, Fede, now that you're pregnant, we're going to use this child as a thingy, as the first sacrifice, and then you need to also come back again to for a second time when the whatever that you sacrificed to wants you to come back so that you can sacrifice some more. Now this witch doctor explains to this lady that, listen, we need your husband also in on this, because when whatever you have sacrificed to needs you to come back again and fall pregnant, your husband needs to make sure that he makes you fall pregnant. Also, you are not going to fall pregnant, but another thing, a spirit is going to fall pregnant for you. Do you understand? And to know that the process is complete, you are going to find an egg, outside of your main door. Baby girl's like, okay, I'll reap the consequences later. She agrees. They do whatever, and she goes home. When she gets home, The minute she wakes up in the morning, she gets a call from somebody saying that she had won. I don't remember what competition it was. She had never entered that competition there. But obviously she asked the witch doctor to give her the money in some other way because they want to obviously make the husband not see. They want to bluff him, basically. The wife is excited. She tells the husband that, yeah, I have been, entering these things. I just didn't tell you. Sharpo, they tell the wife, oh, come get your money. She comes and gets her money. It's millions. Oh, millions. She started businesses, businesses just started booming out of nowhere. She built a house for her and her husband, and every single time, like, she had to go back to this thingy, like, after 6 months, like, this thing was kind of making her comfortable in whatever she did, because it did not call her as many times. You know what I mean? After a while, this thing starts now needing her to come back every 2 months. Every 2 months now. No, it started as every 6 months. After 6 months, all of a sudden it's every, 4 months. After 4 months, every 2 months. After 2 months, it's every month. After month, it's every 2 weeks. So now the thingy, eventually she goes back to the witch doctor, and the witch doctor is like, listen, my dear, for you to not come back as many times, you just need to give up your husband. Basically, you need to give away your husband. She's like, what? I can't do that. I can't do that. And this witch doctor is like, but you're not going to be able to keep falling pregnant every single time and having miscarriages. Like, it's at some point the pregnancy is going to fail, and if you don't get pregnant, you're going to be in trouble. This witch doctor tells this lady that, listen, this spirit that you have, that's the one that's bringing you money, is actually a female. When you are sleeping with your husband, that spirit thing was inside of you, and it was the one that was sleeping with your husband. Now it wants your husband to itself as a spirit so that they can mate and you can have money. You will still have money, but the thing wants your husband. Baby girl is like, no, I can't do that. Like, that's my husband. I can't kill my husband. Is there any other way that we can do it? The witch doctor is like, yeah, let's just do X, Y, and Z, whatever they do. And then she goes back home, and the witch doctor in less than a week calls her, is like, listen, the thing is, like, it wants your husband. And now obviously she's in too deep, and she just looks around and she's like, yo, like, I don't have money without this thing. If it goes away, I'm going to be poor. So she decides, you know what, let me just die. Now, obviously, the husband's family have clocked that this lady is busy with witchcraft and all of that. They tried to tell the husband, and obviously the husband wouldn't listen to them, because every time they said something about the wife, the husband would come tell the wife, and then the wife would go to the witch doctor and dala him so that he doesn't listen to his family members. At this point, I feel like the husband's family had clocked that, the wife is up to no good, and they tried to call the husband. They tried to save the man. He just refused. Eventually, wife conformed and was like, listen, it's fine. She goes to the witch doctor and is like, okay, let the spirit thing kill my husband. Hi, okay, fine. The witch doctor tells the wife that you need to prepare, on this particular day, your husband's going to die, whatever. On that day, the husband goes she doesn't know how he's going to die, but she knows that day it's shy. The husband goes to work. They're talking throughout. She keeps on calling him, obviously, to check if he's okay and all of that. How? Okay, fine. She thinks, the day was almost at its end, and she thought, oh, my husband, nothing's gonna happen to my husband. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, on the husband's way back, the husband got into a really bad car crash. But you know what? He was not harmed in no way whatsoever, but he died on the spot. At first, the forensics were like, it's an unknown cause of death. And then after that, they eventually changed it to heart attack. I don't know why. You know what I mean? Like, baby girl is sad or whatever. But people were like, they could tell that she's more shocked or kind of scared than sad. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell when somebody's really sad that something happened, and somebody that's crying because I don't know, but you can tell. You can tell when somebody's written guilty over here. Fine, fast forward now, it's the day before the funeral. Apparently, the wife tells everybody to leave the room. She wants to be alone with her husband, whatever. And people give her space because they're like, hey, that was your man, Hi, everybody leaves. And, so as everybody's leaving, she opens the whole casket and she started sprinkling things on her husband. And somebody's seen her do it, but then they couldn't, really stop her or anything. They were just shocked, just looking at her do that. So obviously now the family got confirmation that, the wife has something to do with this. But you can't prove witchcraft in court. Okay, it's the day of the funeral, box goes down, they erect a tombstone for him, and that's that. The family wanted nothing to do with his wife, and people felt like, the family's kind of crazy, because the husband's family knew what they knew, you get what I mean? Some of the family members, the husband's family members, used to be like, yo, they find themselves dreaming about this lady's husband. He's asking them to help him escape. They saying that the husband would tell them that his spirit is inside of his wife's house. They should go there and get it, blah, blah, blah. And, they felt like there was nothing they could do. And that wife lived. That woman lived, guys. She lived. Until she fell sick and died. And she did not have children, obviously. And also, her businesses just failed after that. But the house is there, vacant. And nobody really wants to take it. Because when you live in there, there are things that, do things to you. And also, if you try to sell it, nobody wants to buy it. It's a really nice house. And it just has nothing. And I don't want to take photos of it. Because next thing I take photos of it and then it comes from me. Oh, no. Oh, no. Because that house is still there till date. And my grandmother is talking, this story is 10, 15 years old. It's a really old story. So,